Nakeri! Nakeri! Nakeri!
Mount your dragons and draw your swords. It's Game of Microphones with Sir Duncan the Fearsome.
Good morrow, dragon thieves and dagger wielders, and welcome to Game of Microphones. I'm Lord Sterling, Sir Duncan the Fearsome, Shadow on the Clouds.
And I'm Lord Zach, newly minted Dragon Rider.
Oh, is that you back there? I thought I felt something climbing around on my back. Welcome to episode 127.
On this episode, we're covering House of the Dragon Season 1, Episode 7, Driftmark.
And in case you're not already aware, this podcast is from the perspective of someone who's current on the show. That means you've seen all previously aired episodes of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. If not, there's still time to roast your ears and all other identifying features away in a fireplace so you don't have to hear these spoilers. So epic.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
Fear not, friends. If you haven't read Fire and Blood, we'll only be covering events of the Dance of Dragons that have already come to pass on the TV show, so no book spoilers or anything like that ahead. And if you're enjoying our coverage of House of the Dragon and our complete series rewatch of Game of Thrones, which covers every episode in depth, please consider taking the black and helping us to get out of the red by subscribing to our Patreon at patreon.com/GOM podcast, or by making a one-time donation to keep our show alive at paypal.me/GOM podcast. Without any further ado, let's get into our top 5 highlights of House of the Dragon, Season 1, Episode 7, Driftmark. Blood has been spilt.
Woo!
Sides are forming.
On both sides, blood has been spilled.
Oh, yeah, true. A little bit, at least. What are your thoughts overall on this episode, Lord Zach?
Wow, man, really, really powerful. I mean, just tense. The whole time I was watching it, I was like, my fists were just like, just in a ball.
Yeah.
Like just what's with Vagar, with the kids fighting, with the whole confrontation in the Hall of Nine, it's just the whole time. And then even at the end, as everybody's leaving back for Viserys and Allison, and the kids are leaving for King's Landing, Daemon and Renera are still on Driftmark, plotting and planning. It's just like this is all this tension and build up to the dance. It's just like every single week it's just more and more and more and more.
Yeah, agreed. Tons of tension, very, very anxiety provoking, just as everything's going on. The whole time I was just, sitting there like, oh my God, as well. So I know exactly what you're talking about. What was your number 5 this week?
My number 5 is Valyrian Steel Cuts Clean.
Oh, nice.
I mean, it just that of all the daggers, I was trying to avoid, all the spoilery, still shots. And I think this scene was in some of the trailers.
Yeah,
and not the whole scene, but just that clip of Allison, coming at somebody at the camera, is all we could tell.
Yep.
I mean, I was 98% sure that she was coming at Renera.
Trollop. She had it coming
with a knife. I just never really thought about it being the dagger.
Oh,
the cat's paw dagger, Aegon's dagger. Being, I was like, she wouldn't dare try to take the dagger from the king and then use it to attack somebody.
Oh, yeah. I knew it was that blade because I recognized the shape of that dagger anyplace.
I never really looked that closely at it because I'm like, oh, that's kind of, not spoilery because they're putting it in the promotional materials. But
yeah,
I'll watch the trailers, but I'm not looking to see any, deep dives into the trailers.
Yeah.
But anyway, so when she pulled that dagger from the king's belt, I was like, oh, she is crazy. Crazy town. Crazy town.
Nuts, dude.
To take the king's dagger off of him, as he has said multiple times, the matter is resolved. Obviously it's not resolved, but he wants it to be resolved.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I mean, she just goes streaking across the room. The king's guards start yelling orders. Oh, protect the king! And then Renera and Allison come together right there in the center of the room, and Renera grabs it the same way the Night King kind of grabs the hand of Arya. When she comes flying through, and Renera
he gets her by
Allison's
the throat
hand.
too, right? One around the throat and one around the dagger.
One around the throat, and
just like Aemond caught Lucerys by the throat when he was coming in.
Yeah,
at him.
I noticed that. I noticed that in that fight too. I'm like, oh, bro, he just like caught him by the throat, Night King style.
Yeah.
So I mean, we can cover that scene a little bit later, but like they have this conversation, and they're just like, they're vying for leverage and control, over the knife, and Renera is trying to not get killed or cut, and Allison is just like bringing it. And then as they release, and you hear that cut, and you're like, oh,
something.
And it's Renera. Obviously, Renera has gotten cut, and she just kind of stands there and bleeds for a second, and there's blood running down her hand, and then she kind of grabs it a little bit later on. They're still, as the scene concludes, she's still standing there. And at one point, one of the boys, Jace or Luke, has his hand kind of on her hand. I'm like, that kid's going to have blood all over him.
It'll be Trueborn blood, though. So, upgrade.
Yeah, exactly. But when they go back, the Maester is stitching Renera up. And, of course, he says, you will scar, but the wound will heal. Valyrian steel cuts clean.
Yeah.
Which, you had when Emma they were doing the C-section on Emma in episode 1.
Oh,
you had said that that may have been the best tool that the Maesters could have used for that operation. But anyway, they and after the confrontation and Allison drops the blade, there's no blood on it that we see, and then Kristen Cole picks it up. So probably it cut so quick and so clean and so deep. I mean, in a millisecond, that like Renera probably didn't even start bleeding. Like if you cut yourself with something sharp, depending on where you cut yourself, a lot of times,
yeah, that's true.
You won't even start bleeding for like 2 or 3 seconds, maybe longer. So the blade just cut through her sleeve and her skin.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't even start bleeding until the wound like separates again. It's like it cuts so clean that the veins go right back together.
It's like, yeah, your body doesn't even realize what has happened yet.
Yeah.
So there wasn't even any blood on the blade, but it did.
Oh, you know what it reminds me of? The scene from Cube, the opening scene from Cube. You ever see that movie?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Oh, it's such a cool movie. These people wake up and they're inside of a room that's like a cube. And this one guy wakes up in the beginning, and there's a door on the center of each wall and the ceiling and the floor. And you open the door by like twisting this like kind of like a safe lock type thing, and it opens and slides to the side. And he looks into the next chamber, and it's like the same exact chamber that he's in, but just a different color, ambient light. And he's like, "What the fuck?" And he climbs through into the other chamber and just trying to figure out how to get the hell out of here because he doesn't know where he is or anything. And this this woven wire unfolds and slices them all up, and he kind of stands there for a second, until like pieces just start falling off of him from all over the place. Crazy. It's so cool.
Crazy.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, you're fine. So we got to see, we've seen it several times now, but we got to see it in action. We got to see it draw that Valyrian steel dagger. We got to see it draw blood. And some people were like, oh, and maybe now that it's drawn blood, Rhaenyra's blood, the princess who was promised, maybe now it's Lightbringer 2.0.
Oh, yeah. Princess as promised. I don't know. That's a bit of a stretch. We'll see about that. Anything else?
She was the princess who was promised the throne.
Yeah, but that would be the throne that was promised to the princess, right? I guess if you leave off the last words, it could be the princess that was promised the throne.
Words.
Yeah.
Good.
Anything else you want to add about the dagger and the sharpness of Valyrian steel?
I don't think so. Not right now.
It was interesting that Kristen Cole picked up the dagger also out of everybody that was there and just kind of hangs on to it.
He don't deserve it.
Oh, man.
Give that back to the king.
That was a crazy moment for sure. So my number 5 is legacy versus life. And we see this sort of duel between those who are more into their legacy and what they're going to be leaving behind, and those who are more interested in their lives as they're living it. So, for instance, a lot of this takes place at the wedding. And we get Corlys talking to Lucerys, the younger of at the funeral. Sorry. Yeah, thank you.
You said wedding.
Oh, wedding. Yeah. So, God damn. Yeah,
there is a wedding at the end. I didn't think about that.
True. So we're at the funeral, and Corlys is talking to Lucerys, who this week I've learned his name. Last week I couldn't remember his name for the life of me, but they call him Luke. And who is your father? And
Armstrong.
And so Corlys is talking to him, and he says, "Both my seat and high tide will be yours one day, Lucerys." And immediately I got the Lion King vibes.
A king's time as ruler rises and falls like the sun. One day, Simba, the sun will set on my time here and will rise with you as the new king.
Both my seat and high tide will be yours one day, Lucerys.
And this'll all be mine?
Everything.
Everything the light touches.
Sorry, I don't want it.
Nice.
Yes. So he's telling him, your brother's going to be king, of course, and he'll sit on endless councils and ceremonies, but the Lord of Tides rules the sea. And he's like talking up how cool, he's going to be king and that's badass, but being Lord of the Tides kicks ass, and high tide kicks ass, and you're going to dig Driftmark. And Lucerys is like, "Sorry, I don't want it." And he's like, "What? How is this possible? It's your birthright, lad." And he points out, if I'm the Lord of Driftmark, it means everyone's dead. Right? And it's like an epic moment where he shows how everybody is so fixated on their future and their legacy that they're neglecting their time here, and how important it is to be with each other. And, Corlys is trying to provide for the wants of his children, but all the children really want are their parents and families here and now. And this is made all the more poignant by this interaction occurring at a funeral where they're losing one of their family members, and Luke in his head is just extrapolating this, how many more funerals am I going to have to go to before that point,
Mm-hmm.
And Corlys has a great reaction. He's dumbfounded by the profundity of the statement by little Luke, wisdom from the mouth of babes,
Mm-hmm.
And we get another angle on this shortly thereafter when Viserys goes to speak with Daemon in a particularly sad scene to add insult to injury of the sadness of already being at a funeral scene. And they're relating over their anguish in life as the gods have been cruel to both of them with the deaths of their wives and everything. And Viserys is opening himself up to Daemon and saying that he should return to King's Landing, and that it's time that he came home, and Daemon's getting all indignant about it. And he's like, Pentos is my home and that of my children. And Viserys is really, opening his heart to him at this moment, telling him, he's like, "Daemon, I know we've had our differences, but let them pass with the years." A great way to phrase that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a place for you in my court, if that's something you should need. And it's we've talked about Viserys being a tragic figure before, and he really is such a tragic figure. He was raised in Pax Westerosi, Jaehaerys's legacy of a long term of peace mirroring Pax Romana. And he's done his best to preserve and uphold that legacy of peace. And the realm, it's like working with the realm. The realm is peaceful. The kingdoms are getting along, except Dorne, which isn't part really of the kingdoms at this point. So he's been successful in that regard, but he just can't seem to make peace within his own family. And it's like he's the last dam holding back the inevitable tide of war that's about to sweep over King's Landing and take the kingdoms by storm. And Daemon is not having it. He's like, I need nothing, and storms off, kind of touting, looking all dour, which is hilarious to see.
Yeah, same way when Viserys tried to send him help on the stepstones.
True, yeah.
No,
I need nothing.
I don't need your help. I'm not going to use your help. I'm going to go do this on my own.
Good point. Yeah, and last week I talked about how it's like he had almost like given up on needing Viserys' approval and wanting to make a name for himself in Westeros, and he sees the opportunity in Pentos as a way that he can forge his own destiny with his dragon and mirror Aegon the Conqueror in his own miniaturized way. But we got 3 instances of people saying, brother, right in a row here. When Corlys tells Carl, go retrieve your patron. And Vaemond is like, brother, chill, bro. And then here, Viserys is trying to, win Daemon's heart and his sympathy as he's walking away. And he's like, brother, come on, brother. And then also when Aemond rats out Aegon to Otto Hightower, and he
drops a dime.
Yeah, he stomps him and rips him up, and Aegon's like, brother. So 3 people calling out brother with different motivations and emotions. Yeah. But here with Viserys, it's super sad to see him constantly struggling to try to connect with his blood kin. Last week we saw him crying over Emma's ring, and just in such rough emotional shape, triggered by Renera leaving him in King's Landing and moving to Dragonstone. It seemed to dredge up the memories of losing Emma. And here, Daemon's walking away from him also. He's trying to regain his blood kin who just keep estranging themselves or dying in different ways. And it's so obvious that with Viserys being willing to overlook the situation of the bastardy of the heirs to the throne, Rhaenyra's heirs, all he cares about, more than anything else, more than legacy, is his family and the things that are happening around him at this time. He loves his family more than anything, and all he wants is for them to be united and to love and cherish and appreciate each other while they're still here, in contrast to Corlys, who's obsessing over future and legacy. Viserys is obsessed with the here and the now, longing for his family, remindful of Lucerys when he's like, I don't want Driftmark. That means all of you will be gone. And
I don't want it.
I don't want it. Yeah. And so it's like, what is a throne, a title, a castle, a lordship or kingship with no family at your side to enjoy it with and to experience it with? And so kind of just a poignant idea of what's more important, legacy or life, and the way that different characters have different alignments over their opinions on this. Similarly, Corlys and Rhaenys clash over this later on in the episode, which we'll get to, I'm sure, over Corlys's pursuit of legacy at the cost of his own family, being willing to pass on Driftmark to bastards over his own granddaughters, his literal flesh and blood, Bela and Rayla. Did I get that right? all these damn names.
Bela and Rhaena, I think.
Rhaena and Bela. Yeah, that sounds right.
I'll have to double check.
It's so brutal. We got Rhaenys and Rhaenyra and Bela and Rhaena and oh my God, it's insane. Yeah, so similarly, Corlys and Rhaenys clash over the pursuit of legacy at the cost of family and the present later on, but we'll get more into that, into their interaction in that scene during my number 2, choosing sides. So what do you have for number 4, Zach? Or is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, well, my 4 kind of runs into your number 5. I wrote down Corliss, quote, history does not remember blood. It remembers names. So Corliss is all about furthering his legacy for him, his kids, his grandkids. I mean, they're a very powerful house with, the biggest navy. They have dragons. But ultimately, and he was trying to, when he was working out that deal about, the kid's going to be named Valerian or Targaryen. And he and Viserys, strike a deal about that. But he's always, and Rhaenys calls him out. It's like, maybe the gods have scorned us because of our pride and their, his unyielding ambition.
Yeah, she says our pride, but she kind of looks over at him like your pride. Like that was like a direct dig at Corliss.
Oh, absolutely. And it's his pride about her claim to the throne, which she has said multiple times now that she's done. She hasn't considered herself in the running. She says she gave it up a generation ago. Yeah, but Corliss still wants to pursue it and get as much as he can out of his legacy. And, whether their names will be Lucerys and Jacaerys Valerian. And whoever, if Jacaerys becomes king, his name will be Targaryen at that point. But history will remember those boys' names. They are the children of Renera, heirs to the throne. And nobody, in the when the history books are written, Corliss' point is they'll know their names, and their names are Valerian.
Which is kind of like brings us back to the Fast and Furious, right? Where like you get to choose your family.
I got family.
I don't have
bastards.
I got family.
But, and Rhaenys brings up a good point that, and she kind of treats, I think the older boy, Jacaerys, real coldly at the after party. I don't know. I guess it's sort of like a...
That's what I've been calling it too.
What's the name for like a send-off for a funeral? The Irish thing, a wake.
Oh, a wake. Okay, yeah. I didn't realize
like
it was
a
Irish.
Wake, party. I mean, I think multiple cultures use it, but I think of it as this Irish, at the bar and everybody's, drinking to the long-lost, person, the dearly departed.
With your Boston,
the Boston thing, the departed, the wake, going to the wake down by the car.
Park the car, anyway. I'd play some hockey.
Exactly.
My whole mom's side of her family talks like that.
No, nice. But Rhaenys, she knows that obviously they all know the truth of the boy's parentage, but Corliss is sort of like Viserys and is just not going to talk about it, not going to address it. Rhaenys and Allison are like, it's only us two sitting here. Can we not just talk plainly about what the situation is here? But Rhaenys doesn't, because of who they are and who their father is, Rhaenys doesn't want Driftmark and all their titles to pass to those boys because they're not of Valerian blood. They're half Targaryen and they're half strong. So she proposes that they pass it through their daughter's line to their granddaughters. What do we decide? Baela and Rhaena?
I think it was Baela and Rhaena.
So, and her counterpoint to Corliss is, their blood and them being true Valerians is more important. But Corliss is saying that, well, it's their name. History remembers their name, not their blood and how pure or impure it was. But, I thought it was pretty interesting. Vaemond, his send-off for Laena, talks about that and even brings Daemon to chuckle, which is like, bro, bad form, party foul. You can't chuckle at your wife's funeral ceremony.
Especially mocking her, like the bastards that make up the rest of the family.
He's laughing because they're right there.
Yeah, the thinned blood, as so to speak. Oh my God!
So that scene and him chuckling with Renera and her two brown-headed boys standing right there, that plays into this same concept of, is history going to remember names more, or is history going to remember blood and the blood right and who the pure-blooded versus not pure-blooded,
Yeah.
Allisons are half Hightowers and half Targaryen, but it's within wedlock, so it's legitimate. Versus, the strong boys aren't. They're out of wedlock, so they're. If the truth were found out, they get nothing, and because it's a royal thing, they would be cut out and probably sent to the wall or worse.
Yeah, Corlys and Rhaenys here are basically a mirror of Renera and Allison, squabbling over like the similar type of thing, whether or not you can pick your family or whether it's all based on genetics and blood. And yeah, pretty interesting. That quote stuck out to me too, that history doesn't remember blood, it remembers names. Because at the time, I think that was in one of the trailers. And when I heard it, like one of the original announcement trailers. And when I heard it, I was like, oh, it remembers fire too. History remembers fire. But I didn't understand the significance of the quote and the whole bastard dynamics and what a name means versus what blood means. And so hearing it in context, it hit a lot harder for me and made a whole lot more sense. But for people more familiar with the dance, and in my case, I forgot about all of it. People who were up to date on the details and knew the intricacies of the dance when that trailer came out were probably like, oh man, this is going to be crazy.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to add about that part?
No, I don't think so. That wraps up my number 4.
All right. Moving on to my number 4, which is Aemond and Vhagar. Is that on your list too?
Yeah, my number 1. If you want him, come and claim him. Remember Arwen, the elf, the she-elf in Lord of the Rings, who falls in love with the
Aragorn.
King, Aragorn, when she has Frodo and she's trying to race him back to Rivendell and the wraiths are chasing her, and she brings the river down on him before they cross the river. She says, if you want him, come and claim him.
Oh, right. And there's like horses in the water.
Yeah, that's so epic. But anyway, obviously Aemond, and he sort of says a similar thing to the two Targaryen girls, Baela and Rhaena. I think of them as Valarians, but they're Daemon Targaryen's children, so their name is Targaryen. Anyway,
right.
Aemond says, if you wanted him, you should have claimed him. So I was like, oh, that sounds like Arwen. If you want him, come and claim him.
She was mine to claim.
If you want him, come and claim him.
Nice.
Take that away with Aemond, and we can just team up and cover Aemond the Dragon Claimer.
Nice. Good title. That's badass. So there are hints that this is going to happen leading up to it throughout the episode. While everything's going on at the after party wake type thing, I typically think of wakes as being before the funeral. But all this stuff is going on, and at one point, Rhaenys comes over to speak with the little girls, and Lucerys walks away, giving them some space. And it's at this point where he and Aemond kind of come face to face, and there's this epic moment of like a standoff between the two second sons, where Lucerys and Aemond are just staring at each other for a moment, and neither of them speaks. And then they kind of part and walk away, as possibly foreshadowing some kind of confrontation, which we do see happen later this episode with a fight resulting from him stealing the dragon. But a couple moments later, after Renera and Daemon share a little glance, and she smirks and makes Daemon smile, a dragon screeches in the distance, and Aemond looks up towards the sky and sees the sun beginning to set behind the castle. And so that's our first hint of the connection between Vhagar and Aemond that's sort of growing throughout this episode. And then later on, at the point where Aemond narcs out Aegon to Otto, Otto retrieves Aegon and brings him back into the castle, and Aemond is left standing alone in front of a stairway again, which made me think of the dragon pit ramp when he was left alone in front of that, and he ended up going down. And then we hear another roar in the distance, and he looks up at the sky, and it's like as the sun is setting and the clouds are covering the expanse of the sky, and a shadow kind of creeps over the top of the clouds, and you know it's Vhagar in the distance, but you can't see the dragon. So it's like, it's like this really cool effect. And Aemond is like, the dragon is calling to him, it feels like, and he's like, I gotta do this, and he goes running off down the stairs. And oh my God, this part of the episode is so dark. It looked fine on my TV, but then when I was watching it and taking notes today on my computer, it was like impossibly dark. I have half the screen set up with like a transcript and where I'm taking notes, and then the other half of the screen is the episode. And it was so like I turned up the brightness all the way on my screen, and the Microsoft Word half was like blinding me, and the other half with the with House of the Dragon was so dark I couldn't even see what was going on. I had to go full screen to get rid of the brightness, and even then it was still basically impossible to see everything. So to see anything, and this is like a pretty nice screen. So they're doing something wrong here when it comes to lighting, unfortunately, which mars the production somewhat. It seems like you sent that one picture to me with Renera and Daemon walking along the beach in the daytime, and then they like boom shows them at night. It seems like they're shooting a lot of this stuff in broad daylight and then using filters to make it look dark.
I think so. I think they are.
And you can tell because when it shows flames when Aemond is walking down the stairway to leave here at that moment, there are some torches along the stairs, and the flames look dim and like unlike they would normally look if they were just gleaming through the darkness
at night.
Yeah, so you can tell they're like they're using filters to artificially darken everything, which like okay, it's kind of cool. Like the sky looks cool. You get a good glimmer off of the ocean. You can tell that it's another way you can tell is because there's that silver lining around the clouds on the beach scene as if the sun is shining, and it's you can see it still really bright around the.
That would be the brightest moon ever.
Yeah.
If it was true moonlight.
Yeah, totally. The brightest moon of all time. And so, some ups because of cool aesthetics, but some downs as well to this technique. And for some reason, streaming on HBO Max, it just looks pitch black. You can't see anything. So major bummer to people who are watching on phones and computers through HBO Max streaming online. It seems like they're compressing it differently than the live broadcast or something, and the colors just look totally darkened on the HBO Max version. They need to fix it because it's broken. But that's besides the point. So Aemond escapes from the castle, and he's like running across the dunes like Gendry across the vast frozen north, just on a mission, running for miles it seems, until he tracks down the spot where Vhagar has landed. And Vhagar is curled up in this kind of gully area, and Aemond pops up over a dune to see the giant dragon there, and he says, fuck, like, what do I do?
Yeah, it's enormous. I mean, the scale of it, once he walks down the dune and, gets right beside it before he starts to reach out and touch it. You get a good, kind of a far off shot of him being so tiny and standing right there beside the dragon to show the scale. And Vhagar is just enormous, massive.
Just gigantic. And man, you can imagine how terrifying it must be, but he handles it like a boss. And I'm thinking like, wow, he's going to have to do something to earn the dragon's trust and to like gain the dragon's respect and everything. But he's sitting there and he's like looking at the sleeping dragon, and then he looks over at the rigging. He's like, And I'm in my mind, I can hear his thoughts. He's like thinking about skipping the process of introducing himself and just outright claiming the dragon by climbing onto its back.
Just jumping on. And I'm like, oh my God, is that even possible? Is he really going to do this? And he tries. He goes over and reaches for the rigging, because they got like rigging all over the dragon, like just ropes all over its back, which looks really cool, as Lena was flying it a couple episodes ago. I guess that was last episode. And
they probably use it to attach like cargo and stuff because the dragon is so. I was wondering,
use this thing as like a cargo 747.
Yeah. Because I was wondering, like, man, is that just like the ropes from previous saddles that they are just like Vhagar was too unwieldy and chaotic and they weren't able to get all the ropes off? But I think it was on Alt-Shift-X that he mentioned they probably use it for carrying baggage and stuff like that. So that made sense. But he reaches for the saddle, the rigging to climb up, and the dragon turns and faces him, and he kind of freezes, and the dragon chills out and turns its head back away again. And he's like, okay, like maybe things are cool. And so he goes to reach for the ropes again, and this time Vhagar turns his head again more aggressively and opens his mouth, and you can see the fire forming in its gullet. And he does exactly what Jacaerys did in the previous episode with Vermax, but with force and verve and authority. And he sticks out his hand, like Neo blocking bullets in the Matrix.
He has to. His life depends on this dragon listening to him.
Yeah. And he's just like, Dohaeris, Vhagar. And it stops and listens to him amazingly. What does he say? Dohaeris, Likiri. And Vhagar kind of like calms down. And then they're sitting there looking at each other. And I think Vhagar's like, wow, this dude is like actually standing up to me. Most beings would run or something. Mm-hmm. And so he holds his ground, stops the bullets like Neo. And then as they're looking at each other in the eyes, he's like, that's right, I'm about to ride you. And he walks over and grabs the ropes with authority while they're still making eye contact, like letting him know this is happening. And begins to climb up and commands Vhagar. He sort of gets himself situated. And commands
thinks
him,
he's situated.
Yeah, he thinks he is. Soves! And commands him to take flight. And for a few seconds here, it seems like Vhagar is testing him. And, like showing him the flames may have been a test. And also, but then here he takes off and just zooms up in the air and sends Aemond launching out of the saddle, and he's dangling by the ropes, which is something I'm always thinking about watching this stuff. Actually, even before that, he just shakes his neck like he's stretching out, preparing for flight, and Aemond is like bouncing all around like on one of those mechanical bulls, just like flopping all over. And this is one thing I'm always thinking about when dragons are flying around or when people are on these things, like in Lord of the Rings, when Legolas climbs up on one of the giant elephants and he's like walking around as the elephant is like spinning around and swinging. And it's like, you just go flying right off of it. You have no grip. Just the contact of your feet is not enough to keep you stable and your center of gravity level as the beast is like moving like crazy beneath you. He would go flying off. So in this, they actually got the physics right as Vhagar shakes and the boy goes flopping all over it, and then he takes off and he's dangling by the ropes, screaming. And he finally gets back up into the position and like gets wrapped up in all the ropes to hold his spot. And I think typically, if I remember correctly from the books, the dragon riders would attach themselves with chains.
Yeah,
which may be important throughout this, considering that we may see a lot of more crazy dragon stuff. But the dragon rider will chain themselves to the saddle, so if they fall off, they can climb back on effectively. But he doesn't chain himself. He's just dangling on. Not as bad as Daenerys without even a saddle.
Yeah, Dany has no ropes, no saddle, no nothing. Nada. Dany learns from scratch. But I mean, she raised the dragons from hatchlings, so
with no instructions of how to do it.
Drogon wasn't going to be, in theory, as wild or unruly as an old dragon getting a new dragon rider. And like you said, Vhagar's like, you want to be a dragon rider? Everybody wants to be gangster until it's time to do gangster stuff. So if you want to be a dragon rider, let's see if you can hold on. And she, Vhagar takes off, and I mean, she just goes straight up, and he holds on somehow.
Oh man, it's so cool. I loved this scene so much. And then he finally gets on and gets his grip. And Vagar's like, now we're going to try the other direction. And just starts diving, just a nosedive, completely vertical. And he's like, ah, screaming. And the music is building. And there's a cool ass moment here where Vagar dips beneath the horizon from what we can see, and the music goes quiet except for strings, which are going and like building the tension as they slowly bend upwards. And then Vagar comes flying over the ridge, and Aemond is on top. Woo! You know, like,
yeah, this is what I call pod racing.
Yeah, exactly. And the triumphant version of the dragon theme music starts playing, which was really cool. And during the flight leading up to that, there's like this dun music, which is kind of mindful of Jaws, but something we've heard throughout the Game of Thrones and a song and House of the Dragon soundscapes before. Like, I felt like that motif was something that had been used previously, maybe during the Stepstones battles, and maybe during like the battle of Castle Black or something. But oh yeah, and when Vagar takes off, it's kind of funny. He does sort of it does sort of like a running start before flapping his wings, and it reminded me of how I've seen it proposed that pterodactyls may have taken flight, which is like a semi little like running start type of thing. But man, this whole scene is just so epic. He's flying. He's now like, he's getting the hang of it, and he's like enjoying the flight. And it's like he and Vagar are like meshing and becoming one in this moment as they're dipping and diving and soaring and flying together at this point. And sort of like how Daemon flew through the fire of Vagar's flame ball in the last episode. Vagar goes flying through a flock of some kind of birds here, and Aemond is like dodging the birds.
Aemond's about to have a Sully on the Hudson moment, you know, with multiple bird strikes.
Yeah. What's that reference? Sully? Oh, is that the guy that crash landed, right?
Yeah, the flight that took off LaGuardia and hit geese in both engines, lost both engines, and landed on the Hudson River.
Right, that's what I thought you were referencing. That's like immediately what popped into my mind. But the name Sully, like, is that what the movie's called?
That's the advantage. Yeah, they made a movie with Tom Hanks. You know, I think they just called the movie Sully. But that's the advantage of a living creature that can withstand a bird strike very easy versus a mechanical airplane with an engine. If they hit a bird, it's not good a lot of times.
Yeah, it goes into the intake and just screws up everything in the jet propulsion. Oh, but that's
Vagar
bad.
can handle the bird strikes, but little Aemond is like, whoa. I mean, if they're flying at 50 or 60 miles an hour, you know, when you hit a medium to large size bird, like hits you in the face, it might knock you unconscious.
Yeah, that could be lethal. Easily. Yeah.
Yes, you know, if you don't have your chain,
right.
Like what's the little thing you put on if you're riding a jet ski? If you fall off,
the kill switch, little tether thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you use a tether on like surfboard also.
Connected to a kill switch. That way your jet ski doesn't, you know,
drive off without you.
Drive off, you know, like 20 miles before it crashes or runs out of gas
in the middle of the ocean.
But yeah, so that chain is sort of like a kill switch. You like if the dragon, in theory, if it felt you fall off and then you felt your weight hanging from the chain, it would probably like try to look back and like, oh, okay, let's land. So this person, so my dragon rider doesn't fall to its death.
Totally. It's so funny.
But yeah, it's just amazing scene. The music throughout the whole episode was fantastic, but this sequence, it was especially just riveting.
Riveting.
I mean, it's just, you know, he just walks up to him. There's a really cool shot after he gets, you know, Vagar starts to raise up with the flame in the back of his throat, and he says, Likiri, don't hide us. And he calms down. Vagar calms down, and there's a shot from behind Aemond. So you see Aemond's back, and then you see, you know, on the whole background of the shot is Vagar, mostly his like his nose and his face, and you can see his neck and his body, you know, way in the background.
Arch of his spine.
And it's this cool shot of, from straight behind Aemon, and Aemon is just looking down this dragon. The dragon is staring him down, and he's like sniffing him. He's like, "Oh, you're the blood of the dragon. All right, I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to roast you right now. So what are you going to do, kid?" And like you said, he just walks up to him, grabs that rigging, and climbs right up. And it's
so awesome.
The kids got guts.
Last episode with when Lena had talked about how she claimed Vhagar for herself, all he wanted to see was just like a one-off movie of that event happening. Lena tracking down Vhagar and doing it. But we got it here, basically, in like 20 seconds.
They gave it to us.
Yeah. And it was a lot easier than I had anticipated.
Yeah. But if just some random Joe walked up to it,
without that smelling the blood,
didn't have the blood of the dragon, blood of old Valyria, and assuming that when Vhagar rose up and got that flame going, just he did like a quick little sniff test before that, and it's like, yeah, you ain't no dragon rider, son. And he would have just spit fire, and that would have been it.
The fact that he knew the High Valyrian commands also, I think, played a role in like reaffirming that like, he's got the blood and he's got the lingo
and the training. Yeah. So like, remember how Aegon was yawning in the middle of Jacaerys or Lucerys dragon lesson? Aegon was yawning in the middle of the lesson because he's like, "Oh, I got Sunfire, been there, done that." But Aemon's been paying attention to the other kids' lessons, for his chance. And he put all that in his memory bank and was able to recall it and issue those commands to Vhagar and claim a dragon, the biggest, baddest dragon,
biggest, baddest B2 bomber in all of Westeros. And the scene where they're flying through the flock of birds, also, it made me think of Daemon going through that fireball. And rewatching that scene, when Vhagar blows the big fireball and Daemon and Caraxes go flying through it. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were frozen for a second, but you were just standing really still. Yeah. So instead of like ducking and hiding from the fire, I noticed that Daemon leans back and like exposes himself to the flames, which may indicate, potential fire resistance on Daemon.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it definitely could go there. It would be fun if they did. But I just saw a Twitter thread that was like, y'all are getting too deep in the weeds with it. Talking about us, nerd fans.
3-hour podcasts.
Like, yeah. They're like, just that situation is like moving your finger quickly through the flame of a candle. It's
I don't know.
If you sit there, it's going to burn you. But if you just move fast on a dragon, just fly right through it, in theory, it doesn't hurt you. But like, I would say it's dragon flame. It's not just a candle flame. And dragon flame is supposed to be, insanely hot and,
thermite,
all that. So,
like type stuff.
Yeah. So I don't know. I like to think that Daemon might be another once in a generation fireproof Targaryen.
Yeah, I'd like to think so too. And it seems like it to me. There seems to be some hints toward that. So let's hope it's true, because that'd be cool. GoM did say that it was a miracle with Daenerys, but he also says that he just makes this shit up as he goes. So we can't take anything he says too seriously. Yeah. So during this scene, Baela and Rhaena, God, did I get those right? It's not Baena and Rayla. Yeah, they wake up and they see that Vhagar is flying off, and they notice that somebody's stealing, as they put it, Vhagar. I don't know if dragons aren't really property though, so I don't know if they can be stolen. But we'll get more into that conflict later on, because it sort of deals with choosing sides. My number 2.
Excellent.
Anything else you want to add about the epic dragon flight scene?
I don't think so.
Man, that was so cool. It's kind of reminded me.
Vhagar lands, I think, maybe where they had that funeral party. And
I was wondering about that.
He has this Vhagar has this throat kind of, not a gullet, but I don't know what it would be called. This super enlarged, And that and its chest, like he lands, is like boom, and then where the camera is sitting, it just kind of sits and crushes like a brazier or something. It's like
a whole tent.
Especially Vagar is so massive. It's like just landing the thing is going to cause damage. It doesn't matter where you land the dragon.
Yeah, for real. All right, so that wraps up my number 4. How about your numero tres? Good sir.
My number 3 was just fire and how that plays into the end of the episode, and specifically Renera and Daemon's conversation as they watch Viserys and Allison and the 3 Targaryen kids fly off back to King's Landing on their dragon. And now Vagar, like they're literally seeing Vagar leave their side, and assuming Laena had stayed alive and assuming she would have teamed up with the Blacks with the rest of Team Valerion, since Rhaenyra is married to Laenor Valerion. And now little Aemond Targaryen, who is obviously a Green, has taken, I mean, he claimed him fair and square, but that is a huge, like, that's not even the queen in chess. That's like 3 queens.
Yeah.
That's like having 3 queens on the chessboard and moving from your side to your opponent's side.
Yeah, it's like getting your pawn all the way to the opposite end and having it turn into a queen. And now you having 2 queens. that type of situation.
So, it's just, this is a huge deal strategically and tactically I wish you good fortune in the wars to come. Like, this is not a sign of good fortune in the wars to come. You had Vagar. You had Vagar on your team and you just lost him.
Yeah.
So
it's bad.
Daemon and Rhaenyra are standing there, on the battlements or wherever they're standing at Driftmark, watching Vagar and the other dragons fly away. And Rhaenyra says fire is such a strange power. Everything that House Targaryen possesses is owed to it. Because the North wouldn't have never surrendered. I say surrender. They did. They said they surrender. Torrhen Stark, the king who knelt after the Field of Fire. And so if Aegon hadn't conquered with fire, he wouldn't have won the 7 kingdoms. He had a small army at the beginning, and then as he conquered the different kingdoms, he added more and more soldiers underneath him. And I guess he probably had a little bit of naval power, with the Valerians back then, but not to its strength now. He won the 7 kingdoms, with fire and blood. So and that's what Rhaenyra is saying here. The dragons are the reason that they won the 7 kingdoms and that they've held it for these 120 odd years since Aegon's conquest. So she says everything House Targaryen possesses is owed to fire. It says, yet it has cost us both what we loved.
Brutal.
Harwin was just burned alive in Harrenhal, and Laena, at her own will, had Vagar, destroy her with dragon flame. So, fire is a very powerful thing, but once fire is unleashed, it's completely uncontrollable.
Like those magic swords that Melisandre talked about, right? Sorcery being like a double-edged sword that you can hold the handle, but you can't guarantee where it'll swing.
Right. Which way it'll slice.
Yeah.
So she says fire has cost her and Daemon both who they loved. And I think Daemon here says perhaps the Valerians knew the truth of it. The sea is a better ally. And then this is a simple but powerful line. Rhaenyra says fire is a prison. The sea offers an escape. So but she knows that it's going to take fire for her to win the Iron Throne. Obviously, Allison isn't going to stand idly by and let her just ascend the throne upon Viserys' death. There's going to be a challenge. She proved it. I mean, Allison started to prove the challenge when she came down the wedding feast in the green dress.
Yep.
But last week and now this week, with the outright attack, after the kids fight, Allison is, no holds barred. And so this is pushing Rhaenyra to team up with Daemon to have a chance of winning the war. Obviously, war is inevitable. So Rhaenyra is trying to figure out how to win. And obviously teaming up with Caraxes and Daemon, and both of them being full-blooded Targaryens, to kind of combine their claims, against
Plus, she's always wanted Damon anyway. Let's be real.
Exactly. like she tells him on the beach, I want you.
She craves that hot D.
Exactly. D for dragon.
I was thinking D for Damon.
Right. Exactly. So many Ds. And then a little bit further, as what I named the ruse, we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, that's my number
just
one.
Trying to scroll through their conversation. So at the end, Damon says, "We will know the truth. Our enemies won't." And Renera says, "They will fear what else we might be capable of." There's another line about fire. I wrote it down, but I was.
But you and I are made of fire. Script. We have always meant to burn together.
Yeah, burn together. It's like, holy cow, man! That's I
described them as like flint and steel before, but it's more like gasoline and fire. Like they were sparks shooting everywhere when they were interacting in the previous episodes. When they went down to the whorehouse, the chemistry was like, effervescent. And then now they've been separated for a decade, and both of them are sullen and dour and pouting. Damon's like given up on Westeros and is like relegated himself to Pentos. Renera is like, look at what my life's become without you, remember? But now that they're combined again, I can see the fire from earlier episodes being rekindled in both of them, and just like, and like their chemistry re-engulfing the terrain around them in flames moving forward. It's going to be crazy.
There's going to be so much fire and blood at the end of this season. And then, definitely, I think they said the dance, they have kind of tentatively slotted for 3 to 4 seasons.
Oh, really? I thought it was 5.
So yeah, it may be. I'm not sure the latest thing that they've said. And different actors will say different stuff.
Sure.
Unless it's Sapochnik or Ryan Condal or GoM, who knows? GoM would stretch it out for 12 seasons, just the dance.
Yeah.
And then do 18 seasons of Aegon's Conquest. But, he's a writer, not a television producer.
Yep.
So, but it just, Renera just says they're both made of fire. They're meant to burn together.
Oh, and so cool.
In the after the episode, they, I think Emma Darcy is talking about they have this crazy chemistry, but it's like explosive
dangerous
chemistry.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of some experiment we did in high school. I think it was magnesium, and then you drop it from its solution into water.
Yeah.
And it's like fireworks on steroids. It's pretty crazy.
Pure sodium, I think, does the same thing.
Yeah. So it's, that they have chemistry, but it's not the safe kind of chemistry.
Destructive, dangerous chemistry. I can't wait.
So yeah, exactly. So that was my number 3 was fire. Damon and Renera, both fire.
Nice. My number 3 also is Damon and Renera.
Nice.
And just like the progression of how their relationship kind of goes throughout this episode. Yeah, it was interesting during the funeral scene, actually the after party, when the first interaction we see between the two of them is when Renera is showing up to try to find her boys, and the after party kind of thing is going on. And she looks at Damon as she enters the area through the little tunnel in the cliffside. And Damon is kind of like up against the seawall. And he turns to look at her, and they make eye contact. And then after a split second, he turns away and kind of like not like a diss necessarily, but like ends it, and turns back to do what he was doing. And it kind of feels awkward. And then later on, they make eye contact again, and Renera kind of gives this like a micro expression of just like a little smirk that she does, and Damon sees it, and it kindles the fire in him also. And he turns away again, but this time he's smiling broadly. He's like, still got her, she's she still wants me for sure. And so that was kind of a cool little smirk and interaction. Really well acted by both of them, I would say. And so then Damon goes off to the beach, and Renera sees it as an opportunity and shushes her kids off shoos her kids off to bed. Right?
Go to bed. I got stuff to do.
Yeah, I'm sure you're familiar with that. And
yeah, mommy and daddy have things to discuss.
Yeah, but Otto seems to notice. So I'm wondering if Otto may have sent a spy to watch her out on the beach or something like that. Or if he went up into a tower and grabbed a telescope and was watching to see what they're up to, with like a laser microphone. So
Fed boy surveillance.
Yeah, totally. So we arrive back to them in a little bit later as they're walking the shores together, similarly to how Renera and Lenore had walked these same shores of Driftmark during their betrothal.
Yep.
All those years before. And Renera's like, lamenting. I said lament a lot last episode, so I'm going to try to not to say that word as much.
I lament the fact that you said that so much.
Yeah, exactly. So Renera is kind of like, pouting about how Lenore will be useless. No, he's always been restless, but now that his sister's dead and like everything's going wrong, like he's going to be useless or worse. And she says, I know better than anyone that our marriage is a farce, but at least I try to maintain appearances. And she's talking about how she's had so much to lose ever since she was named heir, and that how she and Lenore did try to conceive a child, which sort of makes me feel better about the situation, because last week I was like, she couldn't even take the time to, just do the one thing she needed to do, which was have a legitimate heir. It's like, at least she tried, and Lenore tried, as we heard here later on. But they performed their duty as best as they could to no avail. And she found there's like kind of an awkward pause where Damon is like, he's not saying anything. And it's like, it seems like he doesn't like hearing about her having sex with other dudes. It's like, he's like upset by that. And she's like, there was no joy in it. Like, no, don't worry. I still have a thing for you. But she does say that she found joy elsewhere.
I'm straight up not having a good time.
Like, I'm feeling a little irked, or at least like irked adjacent, and then these guys bring in their bad vibes. Bro, I'm straight up not having a good time.
So it seemed like what Renera was trying to say. I was like, we did it, but there was no joy in it. We straight up did not have a good time.
Yeah, totally. There was no joy, but she did find some joy with Harwin, and it felt good to be desired, which is kind of hinting to Damon, I think, that she knows that he desires her. And I think she was saying that the way that Harwin looked at her reminded her of the way that Damon looked at her, all those years before when they had their little tryst and their secret romantic fling. And, she is upset about his death and says that, yes, he was devoted to me, as Damon understood, and she trusted him, and she shouldn't have allowed him to go back to Heron's castle. The curse is said to be strong now as it was after the conquest. And he's like, ghost stories, ones that Sir Otto and the Queen would, she's not so clean anymore, the Queen would gladly exploit. And so interestingly here, Renera defends Allison just as Allison had defended her all those years before. She says, I do not believe Allison capable of cold murder, and she like steps out in the lead and like asserts it with authority. And I love this interaction here. Damon is like, each of us is capable of depravity, and more than you would believe. And she's like, I believe it of you. The best line of the episode.
She's like, whoa, bro.
I love this. He's like, if you're accusing me of some depravity, you'll need to be more specific. Like insinuating that there's like a vast selection to choose from.
Yeah, he doesn't deny that he's depraved. He's like, which depravity are you speaking of? Be more specific. Like, bro.
So good. I love that line. I think that's my favorite line of the episode. And so she's like, I've been alone. You abandoned me. So she's looking at his abandonment of her in the whorehouse as his act of depravity, that he left her there, and he left her both physically and emotionally, like she was opening up to him, like they were finally connecting. And then it must have been like a giant blow when he just walked away. And he still hasn't explained the real reasoning was that, his plumbing was failing him, and he was like too embarrassed to stay, basically. And he's like, I spared you, like spinning it. You were a child. Yes, I was a child, and look what my life has become without you. Droll tragedy. Great verbiage there as well. And both of their lives have gone to shit. Like I was mentioning earlier, talking about them both being, fire embodied, that together they're like flint and steel, gasoline and fire, like they combust and just like radiate heat, but to get separately, they're just like going through the motions and going through a life without meaning. And it's sort of, what I was talking about before, legacy versus life. Renera had decided to go for legacy, and she took on the role of the heir, and she married who she was supposed to, and she sacrificed her true interest, which was Damon, for the greater picture of marrying Lenore and the prophecy and the hidden writing on the dagger and the White Walkers in the future and everything. And it seems now that she's realizing that legacy alone isn't enough, that like, while it's important, she also wants to regain Damon in her life. And she's seeing how important it is, like, to have love and people around you in the process of forging your legacy. And so they are basically angling to do that, to get both of them going at the same time. And so they both are relating about how horrible their lives have been, although he does say that he was happy enough with Lena, and and Renera, she's like, well, that is quite an achievement. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry for getting so emotional about this and being mad at you. And Damon's like, don't be sorry. At least I'm allowed to mourn my losses, because she's had this loss of Harwin Breakbones, but she's not even allowed to mourn, which must be brutal. She's got to just like keep a stone face and go about the daily routines, and she can't express her real feelings. Mourning is an important process, and, she's got to do it in secret and can't share her feelings with anybody, really. So that's kind of a tough position to be in. And it's here where he's sensitive to her feelings as well, that she reaches out to touch him. And there's like this, like the tension in this scene is like so thick. And she reaches out and she touches his chest, and she's raising her hand towards his head and his neck. And he's like, Renera, like there could be somebody watching, like, like this isn't the right thing for us to be doing. And she just like shuts him down. She's like, I'm no longer a child and I want you, which it makes it kind of awkward because previously she was a child, which is an awkward dynamic. It's like knowing someone who was a kid and then like getting with them romantically after, kind of weird.
Yeah. And it's your niece.
Yeah. On top of it. Yeah. Totally weird.
Takes creepy uncle to a whole new level.
Yeah. This time it's successful. Oh, it really does take creepy uncle to a whole new level. So this time she's just like, fuck it. Who cares? And it's sexy time. And they somehow have a tent prepared. And
that little shell of a boat that just happened to be sitting there.
Oh, that's what that was?
Yeah, I believe so. And I could see it way better watching it on the iPad than I could on the older Vizio TV.
They need to fix this. Like, they got to figure this shit out.
I don't know. And both were on HBO Max. One was on the iPad app, and one was HBO Max on a
interesting
Amazon Fire TV plug-in.
And you could see it on the
HDMI.
Right, and you could see it on the iPad, but I was on a Mac computer, so same company, same type of screens and stuff, and I couldn't see anything on that.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. So, but we could. Damon has some pretty gnarly scars, like on his arms.
Oh yeah,
and on his back,
shoulder. And
so he's in the Stepstones. He got. I mean, that's the only war that we know of that he's fought in. But it's pretty interesting. Some people were saying they thought Renera was just kind of laying there like Allison did with decrepit old Viserys, just kind of lifeless and not enjoying it. But
didn't seem that way.
I didn't get that vibe from there.
I know the shot they're talking about where she like kind of looks up at the canvas that's above them. To me, she seemed more like mesmerized and like than disinterested.
Allison was just like straight up dead fish, face.
Sack of potatoes, most.
So, I mean, Renera was the one who started this. She said, I started touching him. I want you. So it's like, I don't think they would go from that to, laying there lifeless, while
Unless
Damon does his
she
thing.
really just needs him for his dragon, and she's mad at him about leaving her all those years ago and abandoning her. And then, but I don't buy that either. I think that she's into it. So yeah, it doesn't seem like Damon's having any ED problems now. Maybe the erectile dysfunction that he was experiencing before, maybe it just happens under circumstances where things don't seem right. He was with a whore, which is not great, with his ex-wife who's mean, which is not great. And then with Renera, he was like using her. It was during a ploy to ruin her politically. And also she was a child, like he's saying. So maybe those two factors combined were just like overpowered his lust and killed the vibe for him, deflating, so to speak.
It's pretty interesting if, Damon and Renera are going to team up, and they're the core of, the Blacks with Caraxes and Cyrax.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy to see this going forward. So the next time we run into Renera and Damon is as the Greens are sailing and flying away. As Laris approaches Allison, Damon approaches Renera, who's standing on the battlements, sort of watching as Vhagar comes flying over the top and out to the ships. Mm-hmm. And this is that scene that you talked about earlier with all the conversation about fire and everything like that. But there's some interesting things in here that I thought were worth mentioning. Everything that House Targaryen possesses is owed to fire, yet it cost us both what we loved. Similarly, the same thing seems to apply with the dragon dreams, which saved the House of Targaryen from the doom of Valyria, but also the believers in their prophetic dreams always end up ruining themselves, like Egg, King Aegon V, I think, who ended up killing himself, and Sir Duncan the Tall and others at the tragedy of Summerhall. The discussion about how fire is a prison and the sea offers an escape. I think to Damon, that seems to be emblematic of how he sees his Pentos and flying and going across the narrow sea as an escape from his situation in Westeros, where he's no longer really in the line of succession and he doesn't have anything to do to make a name for himself. So the oceans and the sea, crossing them, is an escape for him to have his own destiny, which I thought was kind of cool. Damon is just kind of chilling as this conversation is going along until Renera starts speaking High Valyrian, which is like their little special thing that they do with each other. Mm-hmm. And she says, "I need you, uncle," and then switches to High Valyrian. And she says, "I cannot face the Greens alone." And Damon seems to hear the desperation in her voice as she says it, and he turns with concern on his face to face her. And so she suggests them getting married, so to have enough force to contend with the Greens, saying, "Let us bind our blood," just as Aegon the Conqueror did with his sisters. And when we saw in the wedding later on, they literally basically did that. They sliced their palms open. And we've seen the binding ceremony before where they wrap like a ribbon around their hands joined for marriage. But in this case, they slice their palms and like press the wounds against one another to like bind their blood. And then they cut their lips and do it also. And it's like, makes a full circle, like it's pretty crazy, pretty wild, ultra intimate. If you don't have to AIDS and stuff to worry about, I guess it's, not as horrible as it otherwise could be.
Blood of the dragon.
Blood of the dragon. Yeah. And she says, just as Aegon the Conqueror did, "With you as my husband and prince consort, my claim might not be so easily challenged." And so I was thinking prince consort. It's interesting because Laenor would have been the king consort with their marriage, as we've heard him described. So why would Daemon just be the prince consort? Just because she doesn't want to allow him to be king, so there's no confusion in the matter? Or like, what's up with that?
Maybe, because it's her claim that's basically, but he also has a claim. It's just further down, and he was the Prince of Dragonstone until Rhaenyra was named heir. But yeah, it's even though they are married, and if she's queen, then he would be king consort normally. But yeah, it's interesting that she uses that term prince consort instead.
Yeah, it's like a almost insult or a slight or something. But then she says, the Valerians are of the sea, but you and I are made of fire. And it's at that moment when Damon is facing out towards the sea and he turns his back to the ocean, leans back against the railing. And that seemed to me to symbolize or signal a shift in his idea that the oceans and across the sea and Pentos is his best path forward, as he literally turns his back on the ocean and turns back to face her. And she says, we've always been meant to burn together. And it's at this point where he replies in English, saying that, the natural language of Westeros, English, nothing, not related to England at all. But he says, we could not marry unless Laenor were dead. And this is when the gears start to turn for their little plot. We'll talk more about that later on, as we mentioned. But they decide to get married. And after Laenor is out of the way, they have their wedding, which is really cool. The kids are hanging around. It's like on a misty mountaintop, and the whole thing with the blood and the binding and candles around. I think there's candles, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're red.
Yeah, and just a really cool wedding ceremony.
It seemed like kind of very old school, old Valyrian, almost a paganistic, ritualistic type of feel to it, with their little outfits that almost look like old, kind of the Japanese, kimono and robe kind of thing. They had like, or what some of the red priests in the East in the books have, these kind of robes on. Cause like Thoros of Myr, he doesn't really, he just wears normal kind of Westerosi garb, but
right.
I think
even though he's a red priest.
Who's that, Minerva, or is that something else? Who's
Kinvara?
That red priestess? Yeah, Kinvara, the red priestess who visits Dany in not Astapor, in Meereen.
Right.
Like she has those kind of Eastern looking gowns or robes, priestly robes. So they're kind of the robes that they have, and that headpiece that Renera has on in the wedding ceremony is
really cool.
Really cool looking. And it's just a real, like, you feel like you're getting deep into their culture and their historical culture, because old Valyria is gone, and these two houses are the only ones left. So
Damon's obsessed with the history.
Exactly, you're seeing them like embrace and use that their old culture, their heritage, the old ways. Who says that? The Ironborn, the old way.
I'm not sure.
Or
maybe it's the North.
I thought there was something about. I know there's paying the iron price. That the Ironborn say, but I thought there was a group or.
Yeah, it sounds familiar to me too.
Way. Anyway, I can Google it, but it was really cool to see that old Valyrian. I assume that's what it was, kind of wedding ceremony.
Yeah, and the blood ritual, and they slice their lip and they make like a little pyramid over their brow, right at the third eye, the pineal location of the pineal gland, which is has a cornea still in reptiles. Maybe it's symbolized opening their third eye, which is kind of a cool thing. And yeah, I liked the whole blood ritual of them like slicing their hands up and binding the blood, like she said, and everything like that.
Nice.
It was really cool.
Oh, just a quick note. The old way is a term used by the Ironborn.
Oh, there you go.
Refer to their traditional lifestyle of reaving and plundering.
Oh.
According to the old way, the Ironborn raised their kings from their own numbers. So
the king's moot.
Right. Yeah. So the old way is an Ironborn thing.
Nice. Good call. It sounded familiar to me too, but I just couldn't place it.
Same.
So yeah. Pretty badass. And it's after this whole wedding thing that we get the discussion of Sir Laenor and everything. We'll come back to that a little bit later on. Anything else you want to add about the wedding and everything like that?
No, I don't think so.
Nice. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up my number 3, which was just the pair of those two and the evolution of their relationship in this episode, which was pretty killer. So what's your number 2?
My number 2 is Allison is. Let me try it again. You're not letting me speak the truth here. You're sending a cough.
Giving you a forced choke.
My number 2 is Allison is crazy. She says a debt must be paid.
Oh.
And what she's like, Viserys is trying to okay, everybody say sorry and make up, show goodwill, and we'll put this matter to rest. And he kind of starts to walk over, and Allison says, that is insufficient. Like, whoa, a debt must be paid. And then her solution to this is literally straight out of Hammurabi's code, an eye for an eye.
Right, yeah.
Let me take the eye of her second-born son. And tries to get employ Kristen Cole to do her dirty work with the king standing there and these are the king's grandkids. Holy cow.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it that she was wrong and Aemon lost an eye in this, little kid fight. Not a cat fight, it's a kid fight. But her solution is literally an eye for an eye. So, Renera tells her as much once Allison grabs the dagger. And let me find it in the script, because the way they wrote Renera's...
it was really good.
Both of their lines here is
I shall
really
have
good.
one of her son's eyes in return. As if Viserys would ever voluntarily maim his own grandson. Good luck with that. Like you were saying, Hammurabi's code, it seemed to be like a combination of a couple different biblical themes too, with the eye for an eye concept, which you get in Exodus 21. But if there is harm, then you shall pay for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. And then in Leviticus 24, and a man who injures his countrymen, and he has done, so it shall be done to him, fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Kind of mixed with the idea of Solomon's judgment. Mm-hmm. Where the story where
the two women bring their baby before Solomon.
Yeah, there's 2 women living in the same household, and one of the babies is smothered, and then they're fighting over the remaining baby. And Solomon his judgment is to cut the baby in half, and each of them get half, which is super fucked up. But it's sort of like a combination of that scenario where these 2 women, Allison and Renera, are living in the same house, and instead of fighting over a child, they're fighting for the rights of their child over the one spot on the throne, basically. Mm-hmm. And here, instead of maiming the child by cutting it in half, she's suggesting judgment in the form of an eye for an eye. So it kind of felt to me as like an amalgamation of those 2 concepts of Solomon's judgment.
Absolutely. But the cool thing about Solomon's judgment and his wisdom, it seems like this harsh judgment, but they go to do it. And I'm trying to remember exactly how it plays out, but basically one woman says, okay, that's fine. And the other woman, who's the true mother, says, no, give the baby to her. She'd rather the baby be whole and her lose her child than the baby to be killed. So then Solomon says, no, give it to her. She's the true mother. So he was doing that to is a decisive, drastic action. But before, it could actually come to pass.
It's like a test.
He was testing to see, and then he found out who the real mother was and could, actually seek justice. So it's, Allison is sort of, she has the knife up and she's, giving Renera, down in the country, just, giving it to her. Where's duty? Where is sacrifice? Trampled under your pretty foot again.
Another great line.
Yeah, it's really good. Somebody says, "Release the blade, Allison." I think that was
her father.
Oh, that was Otto. And then Renera.
She does not.
No, she holds on to it for a while longer, and Allison keeps talking and says, and now you take my son's eye, and even to that you feel entitled. And then Renera finally comes back and says, exhausting, wasn't it? Hiding beneath the cloak of your own righteousness. Oh, man. But now they see you as you are. And
so
then they release and Renera gets cut. But those words are
Biting.
just as sharp as the knife. I mean, they're just slashing. Yeah. They're just giving each other, a literal verbal lashing. But Renera feels like she is, she gets cut, but she feels like she has won the tactical advantage with Viserys's favor. And Allison, says this in her scene with Otto.
Yeah, true.
Is that now Viserys will always, favor Renera opposed to me and our sons. And
she
Helena.
baited her just like the way Kristen Cole baited Sir Harwin, in the training yard.
Right. Yeah, because coming at somebody with a knife in that situation makes you look crazy. I mean, you're just in the heat of passion and just you're mad and you're enraged and you feel like the king isn't giving you justice. So you take matters into your own hands.
And guns are too quick. You can't save her own little emotions.
And to the bystander, Allison looks like she is just crazy,
wild-eyed. And bringing it back to the eye for an eye thing, from what I gathered reading online, the phrase is used in the circumstance of court cases in the Bible. So it implying it's intended to be a guiding ethic for legislators and judges, but not that it's meant to advocate for personal vengeance, which is what she seems to be going for here, because the kid is like, don't worry about it. Don't mourn for me. I may have lost an
exchange.
Eye, but I gained a dragon. Such an epic line. And it seems to be more personally driven with Allison here. So this is them very much telling us, that she's in the wrong by using this terminology and demanding this eye for an eye judgment. Yeah, pretty interesting.
And she's perceived as crazy. That's the main thing that, I think Renera is counting on working in her favor going forward.
Yeah.
Obviously, all the Valerians are there. Most of the Kingsguard is there. I mean, they have a sworn duty to the king, but obviously word's going to get out that the queen attacked the crown princess.
Oh, yeah.
With the Valyrian steel dagger that she just jacked from the king. Wow.
Yeah, it was cool too when she's holding up the knife and we get close-ups of the blade and it's just surrounded by fire behind it, backlit, and you're just imagining the letters being written on the blade as the seriousness of the moment comes into play.
Yeah, I did note as Renera is looking at it with the fire in the background for that moment, it was interesting the lines that Allison was saying in that moment. Forever upholding the kingdom, the family, the law.
Right.
And Renera Allison is saying that, but Renera is hearing it and looking at the blade,
which is
the
her
fire in the
duty.
background. And that's her duty to forever uphold the kingdom, the family, the Targaryen family, and the law. It's like, oh man. So it was like,
yeah, and she's being reminded of her own, situation and what she's got to do in that circumstance. So she's like, I can't be killed here.
Yeah, I don't have any legitimate kids. The family part.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Maybe she will, though, now that she's got a Targ husband.
Hey, she got a Targaryen husband.
Oh, man. Anything else you want to add?
I think that pretty much covers up my Allison is crazy.
So, yeah.
I was trying to list some crimes she committed right there. Attempted murder of the Princess of Dragonstone. Assault. I mean, she assaulted her with a deadly weapon.
Theft.
She stole the dagger from the king. Theft. I don't know what else.
Coveting something, I don't know.
Actually crimes that Viserys could just say.
Right, yeah.
Throw her in the black cells.
Yeah, we need more black cells action, that's for sure.
Yeah, not letting people go. We need Larys to clubfoot and Allison get thrown in there.
No way, Larys, he needs to survive.
He just creates too much drama and tension to
so awesome.
be kicked out of the situation this early.
Yeah. I'm loving hating him. He's so good. So my number 2 is just the concept of choosing sides, which we see a lot of in this episode. right off the bat, during the funeral scene, as Vaymond is you Googleizing Lena. Sorry, Zoolander term.
A Googleizer, one who speaks at funerals? Or did you think I'd be too stupid to know what a googly was?
Oh, for eulogy.
Yeah. Yeah. He's eulogizing
nice.
Lena, speaking in High Valyrian and in their customs. And we get beautiful close-up shot of the sarcophagus. And remember how I mentioned that those helmets leading into the Hall of Nine reminded me of Egyptian helmet-style helmets? Mm-hmm. Again, here the sarcophagus with its intricately carved face and everything all over it. Another sort of similarity and parallel to Egypt. But he's doing the whole thing, you Googleizing her here, and he's reading, speaking in High Valyrian and talking about how the Valyrian blood runs thick, runs true, and must never thin. And as he's saying it, he's first kind of grilling Daemon, and then he starts grilling Renera and the bastards, kind of glaring at them. And I was thinking, man, if this is his sentiment, and he really cares about the Valerian bloodline, then he may end up at odds with Corlys here, who's willing to pass on their legacy to bastards for their name. And so,
true.
As we see the whole Valerian house ripped to shreds, basically, in these two episodes with Lena dying and then Laenor dying, quote unquote, I'm wondering if we're also about to see a fracturing of the house in general, as Vaymond may side with the Greens and the pure Valerian blood, and Corlys siding with the Blacks and the bastards. And so that was pretty interesting to me. We talked about how Daemon chuckled because the Valerian blood, when Vaymond is talking about the blood never running thin, it already is running thin, and the proof is right there, standing right there. So, it seems like Vaymond might know and might be on his way to siding with the Greens, which is kind of interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't even remember Vaymond in the books. He may be mentioned in passing. He may be talked about a lot. I don't remember him at all, but I don't remember a lot of stuff. It's been like 3 or 4 years since I read it, and I'm not going to reread it until the dance part of the show is over.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
So the things that I've forgotten is good. Like, I don't remember the book version of what happens with Laenor and Carl, and everybody's like, "Oh, they changed it. They did this and they did this." I'm like,
I think they just added more detail from what I hear.
Exactly, and it's okay. Was it the history books got it wrong, or they outright changed it? So
yeah, good question.
Pretty cool.
Good question.
That whole funeral scene at the beginning was really cool. How they commit their dead back to the sea, to the Merling King.
Merling King. So yeah, really also just great job to the dude who put together the Valyrian language from George's few words that he created in the books, because man, it sounds really cool. Well executed by all the actors in this show, and sounds really like affluent or like high class and
sort of like Elvish in Lord of the Rings, just this beautiful flowing language, and it's written in a similar way in Lord of the Rings, to where has this cool design, aesthetic look to it when it's written on paper or whatever.
Oh yeah, true.
So and we're getting a lot more of it. Like Danny said it a little bit, and who is the slaver in Astapor who she got the Unsullied from?
Krasny's Monastis.
Yeah, I used to call him Krasny Monasty. But she tricked him by knowing High Valyrian, and then she had her, she mic drop moment when she took the Unsullied and Dovageris. She gave him Drogon, and then released the Drogon on the slavers. Man, that's one of my favorite scenes in the first. Is that in season 3? That may be the end of 2-ish?
Somewhere around there.
Season 2, season 3. But Danny, starting to come into power out there, in the Far East.
Legendary moment. So badass.
But getting way more Valyrian, like just in interpersonal conversations, and especially with Daemon and Renera. It's cool to see the Valerians use it too.
Yeah, love it. So yeah, we may see Corlys and Vaymond at odds. And speaking of Valerians being at odds with one another, we see that happening with Corlys and Rhaenys as well in this episode. We start to see them sort of gravitate towards certain sides. whereas Rhaenys had been very friendly and receptive towards Renera previously, like when Renera was watching the king down there hanging out with little Lena in the garden, and Rhaenys was waiting to talk with her, and they sort of related and talked about the emotions of dealing with being a woman and worrying about your heirhood and everything. At the funeral after party here, Rhaenys goes up to grab a drink next to Renera and just ignores her entirely and turns and walks the other direction. Ice cold. And so then that's like a hint that she's sort of deciding to side with the Greens, I felt like. And later we're in the Hall of Nine with Corlys and Rhaenys, and they're having that conversation that we discussed somewhat earlier. And Rhaenys starts off by saying, she wanted to come home and he denied her. So there we hear Rhaenys turning against Daemon, also blaming Daemon. You know, she needed our maesters here, but Corlys defends Daemon, saying he only did what he thought was best, and, you know, you're trying to place blame for an act of the gods. The surgeons in Pentos are as well trained as our maesters. That's an interesting thing to learn. So they do have some sophisticated medicine in Essos, apparently, surgery-wise. So I thought that was kind of a cool line, though. You're looking to place blame for an act of the gods. Like, you know, there's nothing that anybody could have done about this. The baby didn't want to come out. You know, you can't blame Daemon for that. I mean, it was his offspring, so maybe you can blame him for the genetics of whatever would cause that. But that's when she says, you know, maybe the gods have scorned us for our insatiable pride, meaning you and your insistence, not you, Zach, him, his insistence on winning the crown. Like I had not predicted, but sort of speculated about a few episodes ago. Seems like he's been using her prior claim to the throne as a shield for his own ambition as he charges forward, claiming it's under the guise of wanting something for her, but really he's selfishly wanting to raise his own house and his own legacy. Like I said, selfish, so it's perfect match for Renera and her choosing desire and lust over duty. Although that's mostly a joke at this point, because she said she did try to fulfill her duty and have one of Laenor's children. Man, I really feel for Rhaenys in this scene, who she's losing all of her kids basically, and you can tell she's really frustrated. And she's like, dude, I gave up the idea of wearing a crown forever ago, but let's abandon this falsehood that you're pushing this for my legacy when we know it's really you and this is what we want for you. But then she shifts gears and she's like, you know, legacy may be why you live your life, but I want Driftmark to pass through Laena's line to Baela, the true Valyrian blood. Declare it now while we're all gathered here, and we'll say that this is how we will honor Laena's memory. And she basically speaks the forbidden words out loud here. You know, she's like, Corlys is like, and disinherit our son? She's like, he'll be the king consort. He'll sit the Iron Throne. And he's like, you would have me cast an even darker shadow over those little boys that already exists. And she's like, dude, we're alone here. Although maybe not, you know, because you never know who's listening.
Yeah, Larry Strong made the trip, so there's always some rats in the wall.
Yeah. So she's like, we're alone here. You can speak the plain truth as we both know it. And she says it outright. Rhaenyra's children are not of your blood. And he kind of like is, you know, like a deer in the headlights for a moment. And she takes his hand to let him know how serious she is. But Laena's are. They're her legacy. History does not, and this is when he says the line, history does not remember blood. It remembers names. And he whips his hand away from her and stands up and walks away. And it's like the joining of these two people, like we just watched it fracture at that moment when he ripped his hand from her And I thought it was crazy because, like I said, I didn't understand this quote from the trailer, but in context, it's epic and has so much meaning. And people deciding what's important, whether your family is your family or you can pick your family, or whether your name's important or your blood's important. There's a lot of reasons for people to choose either side, but it's like in this moment where Corliss goes team black and Rhaenys goes team green. And
I hope not.
Yeah. Oh, that's what's happening, dude. I'm calling it right now. And she's got a dragon too. So yeah, Rhaenys seems dumbfounded by his choice as he walks away for her, the one who he's been claiming to fight for this whole time. And when he walks away, it really, shows that it's never really been about her at all. It's been about his own ego and his own selfishness, just like Renera. So yeah, it's going to be, I am foreseeing a split between not only the House of the Dragon, but the House of the Seahorse as well. We're going to see another house divided here. So there's some choosing sides. Then we get Aemond coming back in from his midnight ride. The Midnight Rider. Yeah, that's such a good song.
Love that song.
Who is that? The band?
Allman Brothers.
Catch the Midnight Rider. Greg Allman, yeah, good one. Nice, dude. Yeah, I love that song. So good. So Aemond comes back in from his midnight ride, and he's intercepted in the tunnel by Jace, Lucerys, Baela, and Rhaena. God, those two are so hard to get straight. And conflict ensues. The girls are mad, claiming that Vhagar was their mother's dragon and that by riding him, Aemond has stolen the dragon. Rhaena is saying that she was hers to claim, and Aemond's like, well, you should have claimed her then. It's can't waste any time with dragons, I guess, because somebody else is going to want to swoop in there for sure. Mm-hmm. Especially with Vhagar, unfortunately for the little girl. And man, he throws it back in her face and says, maybe your cousins can find you a pig to ride. And he's like, after being on top of Vhagar, the most powerful, dangerous weapon in the world, he seems to be like riding on this power rush and just like super stubborn and secure in himself at this point in time. A total transformation from what we've seen of his character beforehand, being kind of meek and underspoken, and now he's being very direct and and brutal. So badass. They're yelling back and forth, and he threatens to feed him to the dragon. And one of the little girls runs at him and tries to attack him, and he tosses her aside, and chaos just ensues, and he's pummeling everybody that comes to him, cracking them in the face, and they're squealing and dropping in different directions. And a lot of people are going to be looking at him as the bad guy here, but let's be real. He just got teamed up against by 4 people who jumped him in a tunnel and all jumped on him to attack him. So, I wouldn't necessarily say he's the bad guy in this situation. I think there's equal blame to go around at a minimum. What do you think?
Yeah, obviously biased towards team blacks, but obviously, yeah. Lena and Baela are very legitimate.
Oh, true.
They, one of the little girls definitely runs at him first. So that's the first, they trade words, but that's the first action in the scenario. So, I think it's probably fair to say that they started, the physical confrontation, and he tosses one of them aside. I think one of the boys comes in and tries to get a lick on him. Then the other girl does get a lick on him, and then he just punches her right back in the face, knocks her down. Then the 2 boys, team up, and Aemon beats them up a little bit, but then eventually they all four kind of overpower him and they're just wailing on him for a little while, but eventually kicks a few of them off and regains the upper hand. And then he gets a rock in the situation and he kind of holds it up, but doesn't do anything for a second. And then shortly after this, Jacaerys, I believe the oldest of Renera's boys, pulls out the knife. And then it's like, oh man, it just went from a little fist fight tussle to rocks and knives.
Well, I mean, you can understand him picking up the rock as he was being outnumbered by 4 people.
Right. Then I think the knife gets knocked down along with Jacaerys, and then Lucerys ends up picking up the knife. Jacaerys throws some sand in Aemon's face. That's always a dirty move. Throwing sand in his face. And doesn't in Bloodsport, the big final boss throw sand or chalk or something
in Jean-Claude Van Damme's face.
Van Damme's eyes, and
he's
like
blind.
Van Damme's acting, man. It's like, but anyway, he catches a punch or catches a kick or something before he regains the upper hand in the fight. Anyway, and then that's when Aemon's like got sand in his eyes, and then all Lucerys was trying to do was help Aemon gets the sand out of his eye with the knife. So he's trying to slash that sand right out of his eye. So they slash him, and then that, is a pretty much is an end to it. But it's definitely plenty of blame to go around. He's the oldest, so should he try to de-escalate it? I mean, if they should all have tried to de-escalate it, but they're trying to
stand your ground state.
Yeah, I'm sure Driftmark is a stand your ground
castle doctrine.
It's a castle doctrine in the castle.
The castle.
They're like, definitely plenty of blame to go around. The girls kind of started it because they feel like their mother's dragon was stolen from them. But dragons are sort of a first come, first served, kind of commodity.
Yeah, dragons, nobody's property. That's for sure.
And like he said, they may feel like it's theirs to claim, but where's that written?
I feel like, a G5 airplane is mine to claim, but that doesn't mean it is.
Right. Yeah, that is yours.
A G5 airplane. Yes. And lots of money. Play.
So Aemon ends up pretty significantly maimed for life. But still, even after all the arguing and, knives being drawn in the Hall of Nine, he still feels like he came out on top, a fair exchange. I've lost an eye, but I've gained a dragon. So badass. Which is that line he says is straight out of the books.
Oh, yeah. I heard that really good line. I must have remembered it because I predicted it as he was saying it. So it was probably lingering in my mind from everything I used to know about all this stuff.
Nice.
So the fight in the tunnel, we're seeing the factions form there as everybody teams up against Aemon, and those are the sides that we're going to be seeing in the future, potentially foreshadowing a conflict between some of these people in the future.
Yeah, all these kids, dragon riders or potential dragon riders.
Yeah, so potential chaos. And we had that moment of foreshadowing where Lucerys and Aemon stood in front of each other face to face during the funeral and ended up walking the other direction from one another. But here, it's Lucerys who slashes Aemon's face, correct? The younger of the two?
Correct.
Yeah, so might have been a little bit of foreshadowing earlier for that.
The second sons are at each other.
Yeah, typical. You will die screaming in flames just as your father did, bastards!
Yeah, and the little kid's like, wait, what? Laenor's still alive. Oh my God. Because it was the older one who questioned Renera, is Harwin Strong my father? That's Jacaerys, the older one.
Yeah.
The younger boy is still probably of that age where he doesn't understand what's going on yet.
The nuances. Oh man, so what a way to find out the truth. And that's what results in the stabbing, is that insult to their honor. It's when he really decides to go through with it.
Yeah, I think that's when the knife first comes out, is after Aemon says that line.
Oh yeah, it makes sense. And so after the slashing, all of the Kingsguard appear miraculously from out of nowhere. And they're just like 5 of them standing there all of a sudden. But it's too late and the damage is done. And next we see everybody gathering in the Hall of Nine for the fallout. And we talked about most of this. Kristen Cole was supposed to have the watch, and he was MIA. Where was he? Was he sneaking in some alone time with the Queen?
He was with Allison.
Man. Yeah, he's supposed to be on watch.
ZB's theory. ZB's crackpot corner.
Yeah. and
it was cool. Graham McTavish, the Lord who plays Lord Commander, he even says this cool phrase, "You have the Night's Watch, Sir Kristen."
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, so let's send him to the Night's Watch.
Yeah, that could be, that I could have seen that happening from when he pummeled Joffrey.
Yeah, but nothing. He just got off scot-free because Allison wanted to have a little boy toy.
Yeah, it seems like it. So Viserys is just enraged. And Kristen Cole's like, well, the young prince was attacked by his own cousins, Your Grace, and the Kingsguard has never had to defend princes from princes. And he's like, that's no excuse, you idiot. And
I really love Paddy Considine's power that he brought to this scene.
Yeah.
Out
of nowhere.
Yeah, Viserys has seemed, kind of old and decrepit, especially these last 2 episodes, lost, all or part of his arm. He's just been kind of not stumbling around, but just kind of, he looks like a very, very old man.
Hobbling.
Yeah, hobbling, exactly. But the cool thing about it being an actor portraying this character is the actor can summon, some physical power in a scene that you might not think a character could have. But
True.
Even an old man, can summon, the strength to command a situation from time to time.
Like Jack Dempsey fighting off 3 robbers in Manhattan streets when he was like 73.
Right. But, he'd probably have to go to bed and take a nap right after that. But it was cool to see, the episode 1, Paddy Considine, Viserys, come out when he had Blackfire sitting on the Iron Throne. When he banished Daemon for the first time, he had that power and that, force behind him. And he doesn't use that very often, but he used it here to, what's he say? This interminable infighting must cease.
Yeah, so good. So good. Yeah, he really stepped up in that moment. There's another part too where he's like, silence. Or no, he says, enough, and nobody's listening. And then he's like, enough. And nobody's listening. And then he's like, silence. And the whole place just goes like dead quiet.
Yeah,
and it was like, whoa,
nice.
He just erupted. Everything's going to crap. Everybody's arguing about the situation. The maester says that the flesh will heal, but the eye is lost. Yeah, just chaos. We pretty much talked about most of this, but I was really surprised to see that Renera willingly brought up the fact that this resulted from the legitimacy of her son's births being put loudly to question.
Yeah,
what audacity for her to speak it aloud in front of everybody.
Right. She has to say that's the treasonous behavior that's occurring because it's an affront to her. But just speaking it out loud gives it some degree of legitimate. I mean, it's accurate, but she's trying to keep the lid on this thing. But just speaking it, even as making an accusation of a treasonous crime, even uttering the words is not good.
Breaks the spell,
Yeah.
It's like the moment where somebody tells the emperor they're not wearing any clothes. So I was like, oh my God, she's putting herself in crazy danger by admitting this out loud. And that was pretty shocking. And like you said, she's trying to play the treason card to use it to punish Allison. And Allison is trying to play the assault on the Sun's card to punish Renera. They're both trying to punish each other. And it was interesting too. The Viserys goes over and he's demanding answers from Aemond, and he's telling you, your king wants answers, right? And Aemond is like looking over towards Allison, like, we're pretty sure that it's Allison who we heard it from. And she's looking nervous, like, oh my. And, and then finally, and even Viserys looks back over towards Allison, noticing that Aemond is looking at Allison. And then finally, Aemond says that it was Aegon who we heard it from. And Aegon's like, me? Totally confused by that.
He's still probably half blitzed from his all the wine he had.
True. And
like, what?
Aemond was,
what?
Yeah, he was smart enough to run some cover for his mom there, because the king isn't gonna like do anything bad to Aemond or to Aegon, his son, but he could have put the wife to death or something like that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then it was a good choice too, because Aegon handles it really smartly. Viserys comes up to him, and you, boy, where did you hear such calumnies? Which was a kind of a cool word. I'm not familiar with that term. Aegon, he yells again, tell me the truth of it. And he's just like, we know, Father. Everyone knows. Just look at them. And he says it out loud. The truth. In full. Everybody knows. Stop denying it. Look at them. It's all the evidence we need, And I was just like, oh my God, this is madness. Like, it's out. The cat's out of the bag. The bell has been rung. You can't unring the bell. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. It's out. And this is the point where he yells, this interminable infighting must cease. All of you, we're family, and it's so sad.
He's trying to will it into existence.
Yeah.
We're family.
He doesn't care about the legacy. He doesn't care who's going to get the throne and who's bastards and who's not bastards. All he wants is for love and his family. Everybody's here and everybody's fighting. He's kept the realm at peace, but he can't do it for his own family,
Mm-hmm.
It's like Boomhauer and King of the Hill, how he's got conspiracies about everything, but his wife is sleeping with John Redcorn, and it's like he knows all about all the conspiracies everywhere else except right next to him, Yeah, and it's like the reverse of that with Viserys, who's like got peace handled on the realm, but he just can't control his family around him from fighting, and it's really sad. His voice cracks as he's speaking. Now make your apologies and show goodwill to one another. Your father, your grandsire, your king demands it. And just comes across really sympathetically in this moment as like strong, but also old and sad. And everybody is just like shocked into silence as he sort of shambles away. And this is when Allison, says, that is insufficient. And, the whole I shall have one of her son's eyes in return thing. We talked about that. And so after she drops the dagger, realizing what she's done and drops the dagger in horror, and Kristen Cole picks up the dagger, we start to see the factions literally forming at that moment as Daemon and Corlys kind of walk over and surround Renera protectively. And Kristen stands to protect Allison. And it's like you can see these two sides forming. I noticed Daemon and Corlys are standing with Renera, and then Rhaenys is in the background, and she kind of looks unsure about her position in that moment. Like she doesn't want to be there.
Yeah, I didn't notice Rhaenys in that moment.
Yeah, you'll have to check it out. She's kind of everybody's staring and looking forward, and she's looking the other way, kind of like moving her head back and forth.
Rhaenyra's just standing there bleeding.
Yeah. Typical. She's always walking around bleeding in this show from one gash or another. So at least she would have, let Lucerys choose which eye he got to keep, a privilege that he did not grant her son. And so it's interesting. She's like, fine, then I'll get justice myself. And she turns to Sir Kristen and tells her, bring me his eye, right? Bring me the eye of Lucerys Valerian. And the room is like dead silent. And in this moment, there's a little detail that I noticed where Sir Harold turns his head slightly to watch Sir Kristen's reaction. And that little movement told me that it seems he doesn't fully trust Kristen at this point.
I don't think so.
And so he watches to see if he's got to make a move to draw his blade or something to defend the prince. But somehow
from a Kingsguard.
From a Kingsguard,
Holy
dude. Crazy. But somehow Kristen senses return and she's like, "You're sworn to me." And he's like, "As your protector, my queen, not as your swordsman, like not as your headsman."
Your
so to
headsman,
speak. Yeah. And then Sir Harold turns his head forward again, like satisfied that Kristen is staying in line.
I'm glad I didn't have to kill a fellow Kingsguard.
Yeah, he's probably also not sure if he could.
Right, yeah, he's an older man.
Yeah, and Kristen has seen actual battle. I don't know if he has or not, but it would have been unnerving to be in his position, I'm imagining.
Yeah, definitely. I always imagine the Lord Commander having the strength and skill of Barristan Selmy.
Yeah, but that's not always the case.
Definitely not.
Barristan the Bold, legendary. Damn, one of the greatest sword fighters in Westerosi history, from all accounts. Even at his old age. Pretty hardcore.
Yep.
And so, we're seeing the factions forming there as well. It's just crazy. Not only are the people dividing, but the dragons are switching sides as well at this point, as Vhagar is gained to the Green's side by Aemon's midnight ride. The best thing he possibly could have done for the Greens, losing an eye, totally worth the sacrifice to gain the power of like the biggest nuclear weapons around, basically the megaton bombs, and and so that's my number 2 is just seeing the sides starting to form and the factions developing at this point.
Cool. My number 1, we covered it, was if you want him, come and claim him, the Vhagar Aemon scene. So I just had notes after that.
My number 1 is the plot to free Laenor. So we'll just go through those scenes briefly.
Nice. Yeah, that is a note. I wrote the ruse.
Nice. Yeah.
And that was crazy because in the moment I was like, oh man, they killed him.
Yeah.
Rhaenyra and Daemon killed him.
Yeah.
What is it? I want to like him, but holy cow, this is going to mess up. This is going to mess up their relationship with the Valyrians.
Oh, and
them backing, the blacks.
Even just creating the impression that they did will do that too.
Right, potentially. So, holy smokes, man! That whole ruse at the very end was
really
crazy.
Tricked us into thinking that Rhaenyra had gone morally ambiguous for a moment before revealing the truth that it was all a ruse.
Yeah, Man,
that's like the difference between Allison and Renera in this episode is that Allison willingly decides to team up with Larys and goes full dark side at the end, whereas Renera only pretends to go dark side for the optics.
Right.
But in fact, it's just mind games,
So it's wild. And, the end of last week and this week, it's sort of like this tension and the drama all throughout the episode. But then the last 5 minutes is just like last week it was Harrenhal burning.
Oh, yeah.
And Larys with his creepy, voiceover monologue and the rats crawling across Viserys' hearth. And you realize how sinister and diabolical Larys Clubfoot is. And then the kind of the trap that he has got Allison in potentially. Oh, the queen ordered me to do it. It's like, what? And then this episode, Daemon and Rhaenyra are teaming up and they're going to get married. And oh my God, they're going to kill Laenor. And it's like, oh my word, this is crazy town.
So much craziness so fast. Yeah, crazy endings, these 2 episodes.
Cool.
So this thread kind of begins this episode as we see Rhaenyra being stitched up by Maester... Did you catch his name? Maester Kelvin.
Kelvin.
Yeah, it says it here in the script. Maester Kelvin is stitching up Rhaenyra's arm and pretty badass. She's just holding it out and just fighting through the pain as her boys watch and learn about how to be a badass. I liked that, setting a good example for them. And it's at this point where Laenor arrives after being too too drunk the night before to be involved after the whole debacle when everybody was gathering in the Hall of Nine. So he shows up and he's like, oh, God. What had happened? And Renera sends away the maester and sends away the boys as well so she can have a talk in private with Laenor. And Laenor is like, I should have been there. And she's a quick retort, which was brutal zing. Those should be our house words.
Oof.
Ouch. Like, man, he's been an absent father, an absent husband, etc. And he's like, I fought dreadful enemies, but I could not defend my dear sister from home. And in agony, I could not defend you. And she's like, chill, sit down. We got to talk. Aemond called our sons bastards. And he's like, oh, he's doing his whole thing, just super emotional. I failed you, our marriage, our boys. I tried. I do love them. She's like, I know. But mayhaps not loved them enough. And this is when we get the reveal that they had tried, that she'd hoped to bear his children. Her heart was in it to do the right thing. But didn't work out, and the gods had different plans, and Laenor is lamenting about the gods making him as they did, having being cursed as homosexual, but she comforts him, saying that she's not mad about it, and that it's a rare thing to be an honorable man with a good heart, and you may be a goofball who sings loudly and doesn't show up, but at least you're not one of these conniving, evil
right,
people.
Backstabbing, plotting, kind of people.
Yeah, King's Landing, typical people. He's just kind of, doing his thing.
Exactly.
And so he's saying, but we made an arrangement all those years ago to do our duty and yet explore happiness, but there are times when I think that these things cannot mutually exist, that I can't simultaneously do my duty to you and be happy. But with everything that's happening, I'm recommitting myself to you, and I'm sending Carl to continue fighting at the Stepstones, but I'm going to stay to strengthen our house and to prepare you for your ascension. And she's like, Laenor, like, come on, dude. Like, it hasn't worked all these past years. It's not going to work now, and she's trying to interrupt him to tell him something, but he just keeps talking. You deserve better than what I've been. You deserve a husband. And so I was wondering if she began hatching the plot with him at this point, but it doesn't seem like it. It seems like the plot begins later when she's talking with Daemon before they're getting married.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering at the very end of the last thing Laenor says is, you deserve better than what I've been. You deserve a husband. So that may kind of plant the idea in Rhaenyra's head.
Yeah.
Obviously, she's already slept with Daemon, on the beach, the night before. So, she may have already been thinking about that, but he says, you deserve a husband. And she's like, we take that to mean Laenor recommitting himself to being her husband and being part of the family and helping her raise the boys and all that. But it obviously goes in the opposite direction.
Yeah, big time. And I think it's probably for the better for everybody, So she finally tells Daemon that she thinks they should be married and that they've always been meant to burn together. And Daemon says, we could not marry unless Laenor were dead. And she stands there and seriously considering the statement and the implications. And she's like, I know. But I think this is when the plan starts to be hatched, because this is when the montage starts and we see Daemon approaching Carl at the port with his hood up, and the hood's up, so we think we know something's going on, some kind of plotting.
In, Darth Kermit mode. Kermit with the
yeah. Darth Daemon, totally. And so he's like, "Oh, I've heard about your exploits in the Stepstones. Look at you, you're common born, but you have all these fancy clothes and everything. A landless knight with a lord's taste." And he's explaining, Sir Laenor's been kind to me. But Damon explains that, there are places across the narrow sea where names don't matter and just the amount of gold you have matters. And Carl's like, what? Gets the idea that he's trying to bribe him or offer money for some deed. He's like, what are you asking of me, my lord? A quick death, one with witnesses. And it cuts back to Renera, who's explaining, I won't be a tyrant and rule through terror. So Damon must have said, well, let's kill him. And she's like, I'm not going to be a tyrant and rule through terror. But Damon's like, if a king isn't feared, he's powerless. If you're going to be a strong queen, you must cultivate love and respect. Yes, but your subjects also must fear you so they don't cross you. And
right before that, she says she will not be a tyrant and rule through terror. And Damon says a tyrant rules only through terror.
Oh, yeah.
But so Damon's saying you can use terror and fear, but as long as you don't only use that method, then, and then he goes into that, if a king isn't feared, he's powerless. So
right.
Damon's saying you can use terror, but you can't only use terror.
Yeah, that makes sense. I had a little dyslexic moment in reading the script, and I read it, a tyrant only rules through terror, which for some reason registered differently in my brain, even though it means the same thing. So it's at this point where it cuts to Damon sneaking into the Hall of Nine, where there's a black guy chilling, basically.
He just sneaks up behind him and he Assassin's Creeds that guy.
Yeah, snaps his neck, takes him out. Apparently it's way harder to snap a neck than it's always portrayed in movies and stuff like that, which is kind of funny.
Mm-hmm.
But the game is on here, right? And so we get the scene of Damon killing the guy and Lenore coming into the hall and finding Carl there waiting for him, and he's like, who let you in here? Why are you in my father's hall? And Lenore's tone here tells me that he's in on it, that he knows the plan, because otherwise he'd be like, hey, Carl, what's up, buddy? But instead he's like kind of has a hostile, aggressive, confrontational tone, seeing his boo, you know what I mean? Which shouldn't be an unusual thing, but they're posturing as like this aggressive confrontation.
I think him kind of challenging him, what are you doing in my father's hall, kind of shows you the still, semi hush-hush nature of their relationship. Like everybody knows that Lenore and the Squires hang out.
Yeah.
And joust, but for one of Lenore's friends to be hanging out in the Hall of Nine is, I guess, sort of taboo. It's
for sure.
You can be seen around the castle and around the island of Driftmark, and we know they same with him and Joffrey. Like they keep company, but for one of his partners to be right there sitting in the Hall of Nine, like he owns the place, is sort of like, whoa, what's going on here?
Yeah, pretty crazy. For sure. So although I think that the tone and with which he said it still implied that there was, like he was more upset about it than just surprised by it. Like they could get that dynamic across if he's like, oh, what you doing in here, bro? Like, how'd you get in here? But instead he's like, who let you in here?
Yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah. So they're like creating this aggressive posture on top of that dynamic, and it cuts back to Damon and Renera, and Renera's like, I do love Lenore. And Damon says, then grant him this kindness, set him free. And at the first watch, I'm thinking like, oh my God, he means like kill him, do the good thing and just slit his throat quietly, like eliminate him quickly before it gets too bad for him. But then on rewatching, it's I think it's at this moment where they've just come up with the plan and they're agreeing to do it. And she's like, I do love him. Like, this would be kind of a good idea. And he's like, then do it. Grant him this kindness. Set him free. And my guess is from here, they're still on Driftmark. So from here, Damon probably goes to Carl, and she probably goes to Lenore. And I imagine her conversation with Lenore going something like this. Like, she's probably, Lenore had just said, you deserve better than what I have been. You deserve a husband. She's probably says something like, comes back and says, Lenore, said I deserve better than what you have been, but you cannot be what you are not. You said I deserve a husband, and yet you deserve a husband as well.
Right.
You've come before me willing to sacrifice your happiness for duty, which is that concept that we get, love versus duty, love being the death of duty. He's willing to give up love to devote himself to her for duty because he believes that both cannot exist mutually, right? So she's like, let's just both do what we want for real, finally, and once and for all. You're willing to give up everything, and so you're going to have to do this. You're going to have to give up your name, your inheritance. But since you're offering me your devotion and acknowledging that duty and happiness can't mutually exist for you, I'm offering the opportunity to do the reverse, to give up your duty and to give up your inheritance and to give up your obligations and to embrace your happiness. Renounce your name and your claims and be free and go take Carl and just get out of here to Essos, you know? And in some way, I was thinking that maybe Renera sees a bit of Allison in Lenore, in the fact that he's trying to follow the rules and be dutiful, you know, the way that she's holding the bullet when Allison's trying to stab her, and she's like, all I've ever done is follow the rules and do my duty, and, you know, and being forced to be in that position and giving up real love for duty, it's caused the anger to bottle up inside of her until the point where she's finally trying to stab Renera. And I think that she's maybe worried that being forced to live in that way might also be really damaging to Lenore. And we can see because he's in his cups all the time. He's drunken. He's in a horrible condition. And so maybe by allowing Lenore to leave Westeros, to forfeit his name and family and inheritance and, you know, and his obligations to run off with Carl, she's in a way granting Lenore the freedom that she's unable to grant Allison, who she seems to care about, but she can't do anything to help her situation, really. She's stuck in the marriage with the king. She's stuck in being the pawn of her father and uncle. And I think that Renera seems to understand the predicament that Allison is in and realize how horrible it is to be trapped in duty with no opportunity for love. She's been through it herself, you know, also. And so maybe in a strange way, helping Lenore is her way of like trying to help Allison, you know, and sort of like coming to terms with Allison in a certain way. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, they seem to need him out of the way, but you know, they make us think that he's gonna, you know, that they're gonna to kill him. But you know, I don't know if he resisted their plan, they may, you know, she probably did come to him with this plan, and if he didn't accept it, they were going to resort to, okay, it's this plan, or instead of faking your death,
we're going to kill you.
It's going to be your death.
Yeah.
So, you know, but they probably, he just lost his sister, and now his parents are going to think that he's gone too. So and think of the kid, like little Lucerys, the second born. He, you know, until Aemond, you know, spilled the beans in the tunnel in the fight, he still thought Lenore was his father. So these kids think that this person they've been told is their father this whole time just died in the fireplace. These kids have been through it.
Yeah.
And the older one, you know, sort of knows that Harwin Strong is his dad, and Harwin Strong just got burned alive. So, you know, I think of the kids and, you know, what they've been through, and golly, and now they have Daemon as a stepdad.
Maybe they can learn some High Valyrian, though.
Yeah, exactly. But he'll like them all since they have dragons.
Oh, yeah, you know, true.
For baby Joffrey, you know, so far, but Jacaerys and Lucerys. So it's a crazy plot with, you know, getting Lenore to buy off on it and to sail away and be free.
Yeah, it was so crazy. I really bought it. I thought that Lenore was dead until that last shot where they show him rowing out into the distance like Gendry. We got a lot of Gendry references this episode.
Yeah, he got the Gendry treatment.
Running, you know, Aemond running around like Gendry across the frozen plains, and here we got Lenore Gendrying off into the distance in the rowboat. Yeah, so that was pretty crazy. I think that they each split their, you know, like they came up with the plot, Renera and Damon, and then Renera went to Laenor to inform him of his half of the plan, and Damon went to Carl. So they had the body stashed somewhere in the Hall of Nine already, because that's where Damon killed the dude. So what do you think happened? Laenor goes in, they start to sword fight. The little dude runs out to go get help, and then quickly they take off his clothes and put him on the body and toss him in the fire.
I guess so. They may have gotten some, because we're not sure what time has passed between when Damon snapped that guy's neck and now. So they may have already had him dressed and ready to throw it to the fireplace. As soon as the little kid runs out, they replace the body in the fireplace, and then they get the heck out of Dodge. But it's and part of when Laenor challenges him, who let you in my father's hall? Part of that was to have this antagonistic show of animosity between the two for that little boy.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was trying to say before.
That little boy runs off and says, Laenor and Carl are sword fighting in the Hall of Nine. Quick, come get help. And then the guards come in, and there's a dead body in the fireplace burning. It's like, brutal. So brutal. And Rhaenys is just destroyed by this. She's just like, beside herself. Yeah. I think that she's going to split with Corlys. There's going to be some estrangement going on, I think, and they're going to split sides on the dance. It's going to be crazy. Crazy, very crazy. Yeah, because she has Meleys, the Red Queen.
Yeah, exactly. Anything else you want to add about the plot?
I don't think so. On first watch, it seems like, they kill him, but Carl kind of undermines them and sneaks away and kind of gets the best of both worlds out of the situation.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
After thinking about it for a while and then watching it again, Damon wouldn't snap the guy's neck. That's the key piece of is Damon and Renera in on this?
Yep,
or did Carl pull one over on them? After the fact, after his meeting with Damon, and Damon snapped the guy's neck, and everybody's pretty sure that's the guy who ends up in the fireplace. So if Damon's in on it, Rhaenyra's in on it.
Yeah.
Since this whole thing is for them to be able to get together and get legally get married. So it's after watching it, it's like, oh, okay, this is just one big ruse, dude. And they're using that. Damon and Renera are using that. They will fear what else we might be capable of. Damon's sort of like, okay, let them whisper. That'll help. Rhaenyra's not going to rule only through terror, but she's going to use this fear and terror of she might kill her own husband.
Yeah.
What else might she be capable of? So use that to help rule the Seven Kingdoms.
So smart. She'll get all the benefits of the fear of the people without having any of the burden on her conscience of actually having committed an atrocity against her husband. Oh, so best of both worlds.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's move into notes. I noticed something funny when Renera is arriving to the funeral after party, and she shows up, and one of the first people she makes eye contact with is Allison, who's standing there and is like just grilling her, giving the stink eye as she shows up.
Yeah,
it was a great.
Allison has this crazy look on her face.
It's so funny, man. I love that look. Hilarious little moment. And interestingly, we get some cool stuff with Princess Helena at this point where she's rambling about hands turning looms, spools of green, spools of black, dragons of flesh, weaving dragons of thread. And it's interesting so she's talking about how literal dragons of flesh, Targaryens, weaving dragons of thread, combining she's talking about spools of green and black. So she's talking about the different factions here that are forming, the blacks and the greens. And when she's talking about dragons of flesh weaving dragons of thread, it seems to me like she's talking about Renera weaving fake dragons of thread that aren't real dragons. In other words, the bastards, which kind of made me think of Aegon in the books. Aegon, the one over in Essos that we were talking about, who's running around with John Connington and stuff. They call him Phagon. Some people, because they think he's not a real Aegon, that it's like a spoof, they call him the Mummer's Dragon, right?
Mm-hmm.
So dragons of thread could mean like something that's presenting as a dragon, but not actually a real dragon. What did you think of her
I was
monologue?
trying to figure out that specific term, weaving dragons of thread. It's perplexing. Last week when she said, Allison told Aemon, "You will have a dragon one day," and it cut to her, and she said, "But he will have to close an eye."
So
it was
creepy.
like, I already knew what was going to happen with Aemon from the books. I did remember that him losing an eye in a fight with the strong kids. I mean the Valerian kids. But I can't figure out what this means. And then they talk about her, kind of right there in front of her. And then Aegon says, "Another wench." And then it goes back. It goes back to her, and she says, "Dragons of flesh, weaving dragons of thread." And she gets the spider in the whatever that shell is, and just like,
yeah, that was
and
crazy.
clasp it. So that seems very foreboding. So I still don't know what to specifically that term, dragons of thread. If she's talking about banners for war.
Yeah, that's what I was
spools of
thinking
green,
too.
Green war banners versus black war banners. Dragons of flesh, the real dragons, weaving, their like you said,
banners
their factions
of war,
and their team creating banners of war, for the greens versus the blacks. But it seems like it may have an even deeper meaning, but I can't really.
I think you're right about that, dude. I think you're right. Like a spool of green, a spool of black. They're weaving their threaded dragons of banners of war. That makes a lot of sense. I like that. But
that's an interesting concept, though. Dragons of thread being, a fake or a mummers of dragon.
Yeah, like a paper tiger,
Exactly.
Thread dragon.
A dragon of thread.
Yeah.
So, that was pretty. Yeah, I wanted to cover that her little saying, because it's obviously it means something. It's nothing more than, the wars to come.
Helena might be my favorite character. Just saying.
Nice.
She's awesome.
The low-key, most favorite minor character.
Yeah. Love it.
And Allison, I guess, has been perfectly okay with betrothing Aegon to their daughter.
Strangely.
Despite her protesting the queer customs of House Targaryen. It's like, your kids are betrothed now. So what's up with that?
Yeah, it must have been a little bit of ground that she gave to Viserys. I imagine it was his idea, and or maybe even Otto's idea. Like, if you do this,
but that at least keeps them away from Renera's kids.
Yeah, true. And from Otto's perspective, even if it's incest, it would be two true-born Targaryens being married, which would make like the ultimate royal couple in terms of the succession, which now will be rivaled by Renera and Daemon being married as two true-borns.
Yeah, absolutely. And it keeps House Hightower that much more powerful because they're both Aegon and Rhaella. I'm tripping on her name. Daella?
Who? Which one?
The girl.
Helena.
Wow.
Yeah.
Samsonite. I was way off.
So swummy, slippy, slappy, slimming, Swanson?
Maybe it's on the briefcase. Look on the...
Oh, yeah! It's right here. Samsonite. I was way off.
I'm going to have to put that clip in now.
That's fine. So marrying them two together, further solidifies House Hightower's claim on, those kids are half Hightower and half Targaryen. So them being married versus Aegon being married to Lannister, and man, I'm still tripping on her name.
Helena.
And Helena being married to a Stark or a Martell or a Baratheon, and that kind of splits, both of them being half Hightower.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of splits the Hightower's power into two separate couples.
Tower of Power.
High Tower of Power. But having them, be betrothed together, it creates a high tower.
Yeah, and Otto has previously suggested incestuous marriages within the Targaryen family. He suggested that Renera be wed to baby Aegon back at the tourney.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, not at the tourney, at the hunt.
The hunt.
Yeah.
So imagine that now to Rhaenyra's grown-up character and Aegon being, a wanka.
Yeah.
How those two personalities would play off each other.
Yeah.
If they were married now.
Yeah, it'd be pretty funny. For sure. I bet it's Otto's idea. I was thinking initially it'd be Viserys's idea, but he seems to be typically seeking matches outside his family, whereas Otto, this would be further solidifying his direct descendants in the line of succession. So I bet it was Otto pulling the strings here between the time of last episode where it ended and now he's been hired again and this betrothal is news. So I bet both of those things occurred between these episodes and due to Otto being brought back, basically.
Speaking of Otto, I loved Raymond's little one-liner to Otto.
Oh, Damon? Damon? I think he said Raymond.
Oh, man. I'm struggling with the names today. Everybody loves Raymond. So I love Damon's line to Otto. He says, "Oh, I'm sorry for your loss, my prince. No matter how fat the leech grows, it always wants for another meal."
Yeah, that was pretty good.
I love when people give Otto and Allison the business. Just a little verbal barb, and
makes Zach happy.
Yeah, just to kind of, and later on, after Allison and Otto have, when Otto comes to Allison after the whole confrontation with the dagger, and he's like, you think he's going to reprimand her and say, "Oh, you shouldn't have done that. You're crazy." And he basically says, "Yeah, all that's true, but I'm kind of proud of you."
Yeah, that was so cool. I love that.
I was not expecting that reaction from Otto. So I just wrote Otto is the worst.
I wrote Otto is the best. that was such a cool moment. He was like, "I didn't know you had this side of you in you. For a while, I doubted its existence, but now I see you have what it takes to win this battle." She's like, "I regret it. It's ugly what I did, and I don't like it." And he's like, "No, this fight we're in is ugly." So it sucks because, she's trying to, like she says, she's dutiful and she follows the rules and everything, but she got dragged down last episode by Larys, who involved her unwittingly in this scheme. And she's like trying to get out of it. Like she regrets what she did with the knife and everything, but her dad's encouraging her. Larys is encouraging her. It's like this is her fall from grace when she ends up getting this advice from her father. It's like, the Joker just needed a little push, Otto pushes her to embrace that ugliness and that bad side of herself. And it's after that she goes to, when she's on the ship heading back to King's Landing, that Larys approaches her and she says, that I'm going to need a friend like you. And that basically she lowers herself to his level and Otto's level, and she's made a conscious decision to forsake righteousness for deception. And it's like she's embracing like the Machiavellian attitude of the ends being justified by the means, where she's willing to work with these bad people and commit atrocities potentially to save her children in the end as the desired outcome. And so they're making it pretty clear this episode that she's sort of taking the low road, whereas Renera is faking the low road by actually letting Laenor live. So they're definitely trying to push us towards Renera, I think, in this episode. But I love Larys and I love Otto. they're so awesome, and Allison.
You're demented.
Demented D.
They're like Cersei and Gregor Clegane and Ramsay Bolton. I mean, they're
love to hate them type thing.
Yeah, exactly. They play a really compelling character that drives the tension and the drama, but it's like, oh, I can't stand them.
Definitely. Speaking of Larys, it's interesting during the after party, Kristen Cole comes up to Allison and he's like, "Dude, Larys has just been staring at you this whole time, unabashedly." And he's just like grinning and trying to pretend like he's not grinning, but then like flickers of smile coming through his dour look. He just can't hide how pleased he is with himself for all of this. And he's just waiting for his moment to arrive with Allison, which he gets later on. And, he ends up being, his dedication has not gone unnoticed, as she says, right?
Bro. So how does Kristen Cole not realize that her and Larry Strong are on a team?
In cahoots?
Exactly.
Yeah, good question. It's going to become more and more obvious, I think. It's got to be, right?
So a tiny little plot hole, I think, was the oldest boy of Renera says they should be at Harrenhal. And Renera's like, shush, be quiet. Don't say that. For the obvious reasons. But why is Larry Strong here at Driftmark instead of at Harrenhal? If the funerals and wakes and all that are happening at relatively the same time, wouldn't it make sense for the new Lord of Harrenhal and the son and heir and brother of Harwin be at Harrenhal to bury
it
their
seems
bodies?
like he has some kind of official position that he's in, though I'm not sure what, because he had access to the black cells. He had the authority to release prisoners. So he must have some sort of position that puts him in close proximity to the royalty and, involves his presence at King's Landing or something. I don't know.
Right. And even for them to travel with them to Driftmark for Elena's funeral.
Bringing him.
Not a big deal. Obviously, he would rather be there with all the key players watching and learning and observing. Instead of he's got nothing to do at Harrenhal. His dad and brother are gone. Oh, like Damon. Oh, I'm so sad.
Yeah.
Talking about his late lady wife.
Oh yeah.
Rhea Royce. Say, oh, I'm so sad.
Don't
be. I'm not. So that's how Larry Clubfoot feels about his brother and father.
I want more information about their past and why he was so willing to, do that. We speculated about the Clegane connection and how he may have been victimized by Harwin as kids or something, but it'd be cool to get some more info on that. Maybe we'll get something.
Yep.
What else you got for notes? Anything?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think we covered it, but that after all the ruse kind of comes to light, and they talk about I don't want to be a tyrant. A tyrant rules only through terror. But then Damon's like, if you're not feared, if the king is not feared, he's powerless. And Rhaenyra, talks about, they're going to whisper that I was involved or we were involved, and
they'll wonder what else we're capable of.
Exactly, that line is what I wrote down. They'll wonder what else we're capable of, and that fear, will help them keep some of the lesser lords and knights in line.
Yeah, and this is the difference between her and Viserys. Viserys wants to please everybody and make everybody happy, and he's worried about love and respect, but he has none of that fear element at all. So Renera is learning from his example of embracing the fear and love and gaining people's respect and trust, but she's also learning from Daemon that terror and fear is also a motivating factor. So she's going to have full spectrum domination of the ways of manipulating your people.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a big theme of Daemon is let people think what they're going to think and use that to your advantage, because he never really affirms or denies
anything.
Prince for a day in episode 1.
Yep.
He never really tells Viserys that he didn't take Rhaenyra's virginity. Mm-hmm. He says, at least it was with me, not some, random Joe in a pleasure house. So, he even pushes Viserys to think that he did.
Right. Like, wouldn't it be better with me instead of some rando?
Yeah. He lets people think that he was behind, Rhea Royce, falling off of her horse. And he uses all this to beef his reputation of being cunning and ruthless and completely
maniacal
and unhinged and willing to do anything. And so Rhaenyra says they're in the realm will whisper that I was somehow responsible. And then Daemon says, let them whisper. And that's right as Rhaenys is finding the burnt body in the fireplace.
No! So brutal.
And
so
Corlys
she's going to turn against them for sure.
Maybe, yeah. If she really thinks they did this,
I think that's what they're implying by this. right? Because she already thinks that Damon is responsible for her daughter's death.
Right, not letting her come home.
Yeah, so now that Damon and Renera are teaming up, I think morally she's going to have no way to be, it's not going to be possible to back them, yeah.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah, so House Valerian is going to split.
Ooh. Damon says, we will know the truth of it, and our enemies won't, talking about the ruse, and they will fear what else we might be capable of. So, again, like Arya told us way back in the beginning, fear, and what Syrio Farrell told her, fear cuts deeper than swords.
Deeper than swords. Deeper than cat's paw daggers, too. Oh, so we got an interesting moment when poor Viserys, he gets shut down by Damon, and he's just exhausted mentally and physically, and he tells his queen, I'm going to bed, Emma. And sadly,
totally slipping.
Yeah, we see that his mind is going.
Dave, my mind is going. I can feel it.
My mind is going, Dave. Sadly, it sucks to see. What a great, oh man, Paddy Considine just knocks this Viserys role out of the park. I had I was not expecting to become so emotionally attached to this character, but I really love his portrayal of Viserys, and he really gets across. He made him relatable, so relatable that I feel so bad for him in a lot of these scenes. It's good, really good acting.
Yeah, absolutely. They one other little note about that Valerian wedding ceremony at the end. I found on Twitter today that according to Mr. Peterson, who created the Valerian language from George's stuff, those are Valerian glyphs. That they marked on each other's foreheads with the blood. And fire is on Renera's forehead, the glyph that means fire, and blood is on Damon's forehead. So
badass.
The Valerian symbols for those two words is what they put on each other in the middle of that ceremony. It's a pretty cool note.
Yeah, really cool. Good find. Oh, I thought of another cool parallel / reference rewatching the scene where Aemond takes Vhagar. He creeps up and he's about to touch the rigging, and Vhagar is sitting there asleep, and his eye opens, and it reminded me of the movie The Land Before Time. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, nice. I'm trying to think of other movies where a dinosaur or Godzilla has woken up like that.
Yeah, in Land Before Time, Littlefoot or whatever the little Brontosaurus character, the lead, they find what they think is a dead Sharptooth, a dead T-Rex, and
I do remember that.
It's lying on its back, with its head upside down, and they walk over to it, and its eye opens just like the dragon in this. I was like, oh, that's gotta, because the little dinosaurs are so much smaller than the giant T-Rex. Mm-hmm. I feel like it was almost a direct reference to that. Aemond being relatively the same size compared to the giant T-Rex.
Absolutely, Or when the White Walkers pulled, was it Viserion or Rhaegal?
Viserion out of the ice.
Out of the ice, and then he reanimates him with the White Walker energy, and his eye opens and it's blue. He's like, I think that was the
blue eye.
I think that was the penultimate season 7 episode. And then the last episode, or no, that may have been the finale. Was that the season 7 finale?
I don't even remember.
Eye?
It's all a blur at this point.
Because season 8, Battle of Winterfell, I think was episode 3. No, they tear down the wall. That's the end of season 7.
Oh, yeah. And they come
Valerian
flying and marching south.
Viserion blast the wall, and Tormund, you're not sure if Tormund and Beric Dondarrion maybe is up there.
Yeah.
Because they have that meeting at Eastwatch by the Sea. Anyway.
Thoros.
Yeah.
Is with
Beric. One of them died on the ice.
Thoros died on the ice, yeah.
And reanimated Beric one more time. I can't remember.
Yeah, something like that.
But anyway, so I think
I don't remember.
So I think the penultimate episode of season 7, the finale was they pull him out of the ice and the blue eye, and then it cuts to black.
So hardcore.
So, but that his blue eye coming back alive with the color of the
same kind of shot,
and their eyes was a little bit remindful of Vagar waking up and like. Whew.
Definitely, definitely. Oh, there were a couple moments in this episode where I saw some potential foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm.
When Allison is trying to stab Renera, Kristen Cole moves in, and instead of Damon moving in to protect him, he cuts off Kristen and stops him in place. So I think that may foreshadow a potential conflict, a fight between Damon and Kristen, two experienced combat warriors, which would be interesting. And also another bit of foreshadowing with Damon, perhaps. And I don't like this one. This one makes me nervous. After having sex with Renera and everything, Renera wakes up alone in the tent underneath the boat, and she kind of gets up and walks out to the beach where she finds Damon standing by the water, looking out and watching Vagar flying around. And she's like, who is it? Because they're wondering who took Vagar, who has the dragon now. And Damon doesn't answer, but Damon standing there watching it made me think that to me, it foreshadowed a future fight between Damon and Caraxes against Aemond and Vagar, which is particularly sad because Vagar and Caraxes were friends just last episode, flying around with their aerial show and Pentos. And so it's going to crush my soul to see those two dragons fight if they end up having to fight with Aemond and Daemon. And I think that maybe have been foreshadowed in this scene. And I don't remember anything from what happens ahead in the conflict of Dance of Dragons. I've all forgotten it over the past few years, but I just got a sense of that foreshadowing from this scene. And so, man, I'm hoping that doesn't happen because that would be, it's going to have to happen. I feel like it's going to happen. It's going to suck. It's going to be awesome, but it's going to suck at the same time, Yeah. And it's funny how, like you mentioned, when Otto goes to visit Allison, she knows she fucked up and she's listing off all of her indiscretions, and Otto's just like, all true. Oh, you could have at least said, no, it's not that bad, but nope, he just agrees. Right. Hilarious. Yeah, it sucks she's being corrupted by all of those around her, but in the end, it's her own decision to go down the dark side with all of those bad people, I think that's what's going to happen. Oh, interestingly, in this scene also, Otto tells her, and I promise you, in time, you and I together will prevail. He's like the Darth Vader figure, like getting his daughter to fight with him to overthrow the emperor, the king, and everything. But he says, the boy was right. What that rogue Aemond has done in winning Vagar to our side, it's worth 1,000 times the price he paid. And one, it's super true, and holy fuck, what an ominous statement that they're talking about the equivalent of nukes being dropped in the future. Like, we have the nukes now, and Allison seems kind of like scared anew slightly by the implications of the statement. Yeah. But also, it's worth 1,000 times what he paid. So what did he pay? He paid an eye, right?
He paid an eye.
So 1,000 eyes for one and dragon. 1,000 eyes and one dragon. So he's not Bloodraven. He's far, this is like 100 years before Bloodraven was born-ish, or, sometime like 70 years before, something like that. But I thought it was cool to get that imagery of 1,000 eyes and one dragon, kind of referencing the Bloodraven's 1,000 eyes and one type of thing. So just some similar imagery in the wording that they're using. No direct connection, but eloquently stated, I thought, and cool imagery. There was another moment where after this scene, it zooms in on a window at high tide, and it's like two windows separated by a structural beam of the building, like part of the wall. and Corlys is in one window and Rhaenys is in the other window, and they're divided by that piece of wall. And then Rhaenys is kind of like, ugh, and walks away and leaves him. And that imagery of them being split by that piece of wall and the two separate windows symbolizes their drifting apart from one another, and further confirms my speculation that they're going to be splitting along ideological lines.
There was similar imagery last week when Renera was in the secret passageway listening to Harwin and Lord Lionel talk in Harwin's room. They were both in separate kind of windows of the way the pillars were, and the way the camera was sitting. And they were at odd, they were, at odds with each other. And Lionel was saying how terrible it was, what he's done, and, cast a shadow on the family and forces him to try to resign. But of course that doesn't work. But they end up not splitting. They go together to Harrenhal, but
true. Interesting. Very interesting. And so we see 3 dragons escorting the royal vessel. We have Aemond on Vhagar, and the other 2 must be what? Aegon on Sunfire and Helena on Dreamfire or something?
Dreamfire, I believe, yep.
Interesting, yeah.
So I think Sir Matthew Repp or somebody in our chat
I think it was Sir Matthew.
Pointed out the interesting, if Helena is a dreamer, which she seems to be with dragon dreams, and she flies the dragon Dreamfire. It's pretty epic.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Perfect combo. Really cool. So really great episode overall. Lots of interesting political intrigue, lots of movement taking place. We have Allison taking the dark side and Renera faking the dark side. Man, just so much cool stuff going on in this episode. I thought it was fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to next week.
Yep, I believe. Well, that's the tiniest bit of a spoiler, so I won't say it.
Okay, I think I know what you're going to say because I saw one still frame and things looked a bit different. Let's say, yeah.
So this should be the last time that happens.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. So yes,
the viewers who know will understand what we're talking about.
Yep.
And those who don't, it's not. You're going to see it next week, but some people don't want to see anything from the next week. So
yeah. Like me, typically. I'm like that. All right, stick with us, and we'll be right back after a short break. All right, let's jump into Raven's Calls. Lord Anthony J. of House Alaquin says, wow, what an episode. Twists and turns in the plot. Twists and turns, hold on for dear life, dragon riding. Yeah, that's true, it's flying all around. The children are truly in the game now. For the little shit he is, the whole scene of Aemond climbing Vhagar was an epic moment of the season. We hadn't seen someone claim and ride a dragon until this point, and wow, it was great. Then we're brought back to how awful he is with his cousins and nephews. I think that's the correct familial connection. Yeah, cousins, nephews. Yeah, some weird stuff going on there. The hatred depicted by Allison and wanting an eye for an eye revenge brought me back to Cersei wanting a direwolf killed for attacking Joffrey and GOT. Yeah, totally. She wanted retribution in the form of blood as well. And what a great plot twist at the end with Sir Laenor's fake death. It had me at the edge of my seat thinking, oh my God, Renera truly is a cold-blooded mad queen. But no, she showed the love and appreciation she's had for Laenor and set him free. This episode depicted some of the plotting and scheming that made me love Game of Thrones and keeps me truly invested into what the future holds for this series. I agree. All good, all awesome stuff this episode.
Outstanding. Sir Matthew of House Repp Thanks for writing in again, Sir Matthew.
As always.
Tinfoil time. The Merling King is the drowned god of the Ironborn.
Ooh.
We know that George R.R. Martin sprinkled in a bunch of Lovecraftian Easter eggs in the lore of his world. In the world of Ice and Fire, there's a manuscript written by a Maester Theron that says that the sea stone chair of the Ironborn and the foundation of the High Tower in Old Town were built by a race of creatures called Deep Ones, a race of half-men sired by creatures of the sea upon human women.
Damn. Kind of like the, the sons and daughters of the giants from the Bible. What are they called?
Nephilim?
Yeah, kind of like the Nephilim sounds, except ocean-based.
Yeah. The manuscript also says that the Deep Ones are the basis of Merling legend, and whatever creature fathered the Deep Ones are the source of the drowned god.
Very interesting.
Ironborn legend claims their Grey King wed a Merling to become lord over the Western Islands and the seas beyond. House Valerian claims the Merling King gifted them the Driftwood throne. They must have a furniture store under the sea.
Under the sea.
The Baratheon's full patch face was lost at sea for days after the ship carrying Robert Baratheon's parents sank, and the fishermen claim Merlings taught him to breathe water in return for his seed.
Oh.
Ew.
Worth it.
Worth it. So we double back to H.P. Lovecraft and his story, Shadow over Innsmouth, which tells of a rundown coastal town who made a pact with a sea god named Dagon and interbred with his servants, the Deep Ones, bipedal fish frog-looking creatures, to further their line with Deep Ones, able to produce offspring with humans that mutate as they age to full Deep Ones. Dagon is the Merling King / drowned god, and the Deep Ones are the half-man, half-fish of legend, but a hell of a lot uglier. And he sent, I don't know if you can get the picture he sent of these like biped fish frog looking things. It's pretty crazy.
I'll put it up in the video. Thank you, Sir Matthew. Lady Amanda of House Massey says, this episode started off slow for me, but what a ride it ended up taking us on. Aemond climbing Vhagar, Renera versus Allison, Laenor's death hoax. They did an amazing job of showing how massive Vhagar really is, and I was loving every second of it. Aemond claimed Vhagar and got a huge ego boost. He really thought he could take on all 4 of his cousins' nephews. Then dropped his mic on everyone with, I may have lost an eye, but I gained a dragon. I'm getting little Daemon vibes from him, especially when he picked up that rock. Oh, yeah, true. Interesting. Can't believe we only have 3 more episodes, but I can't wait. Daemon vibes. There you go. Another Daemon-Aemond connection. I'm foreseeing a battle between those two and their dragons. Oh, I don't want to see it. I like Caraxes too much to be slaughtered by the massive Vhagar.
Oh, man. Lord Tom of the Misty Moor says, I'm enjoying this, although I still can't bring myself to rewatch Game of Thrones. It still hurts.
I haven't watched any Game of Thrones since season 8 ended, so. And I liked I liked season 8, so I understand.
I rewatched the finale, but other than that, I don't think I rewatched all of season 8 or the whole series after it ended. I think I watched the finale 2 times, and that's it.
Yeah, sounds about right. I'll have to rewatch at some point for sure. All right, and we've got a voicemail from Archmaester Stitches.
Game of Microphones, the best fucking Game of Thrones House of the Dragon podcast out there.
Thank you,
my
sir.
Loyal opinion anyway. Hey, it's Archmaester Stitches with our weekly feedback. That's right, the one from the Siren Isle, the one that rides the blue steel demon dragon, Janos.
Oh! Oh! It's alive!
Roar.
And I get it. How does a maester ride a dragon? Well,
if you haven't been paying attention, Duncan has said, I got a pretty wicked audio drama with some pretty amazing doctors. So check it out, Sirenicide.
Yeah.
Just another plug. No, I really do appreciate it, man. Every time you guys plug my projects, that makes me feel so grateful just to have you out there. Not just as this amazing show that gives all of us great insight, in-depth coverage, breakdowns of everything, isn't afraid to be shrill, wants to be opinionated, and that kind of thing. I love that. I love, I still don't understand how people like listen to like a podcast that's like made by the network that makes a TV show.
Right.
Like, oh, it was a great episode. What, are you going to say it was a bad one?
You're fired.
That's your job. All right. So let's, again, get into this week of episode 7. All right. So I'm going to get my book deviation stuff out of the way right off the bat. I fucking love how much this thing just keeps taking the source material and just being like, yeah, that's what these figureheads around the realm thought. Again, whether it's Mushroom or Maesters, but this is what really fucking happened.
Yeah, that's the best.
Like, they allude to maybe Damon might have had,
a role.
Corliss's son killed, but they don't like, that's it. It's not for sure that he paid someone to have it done or the lover to do it or anything like that. And this show just straight up here is like, set you up thinking that's what's gonna fucking happen right there by the hearth and everything. I'm like, oh my God, they're gonna lean into that thing in the book being true. And then it's like, nope. How about this? Happily ever after for finally some people in Game of Thrones, maybe. Woo! If we see them again. I kind of hope we don't. I like to leave it ambiguous like that.
Yeah, me too.
What's the other thing? Oh God. Viserys, man. It's like creeping down his forehead and crawling up his cheeks. His twisted Westerosian fucking leprosy. How is this fucker still alive? And imagine going through all that hell just to turn around and be like fucking like a kindergarten teacher or a preschool teacher, like, no, children, shut up, like some lady screaming at the kids on the bus or at recess or something like that. I feel so bad for that dude. I know he's just trying to be like another good peaceful king since he's got to live in the shadow of Jaehaerys. But God, I feel so bad for him, man. I really do. He loved his actual wife, but he was like bound by duty. And speaking of which, Duncan, I love like your absolute disdain for Renera in the last episode. I don't say I agree with it. I got some insight here. Check this out. Basically call this Allison the moralist and Renera the hedonist. And I think both of them, unfortunately, young girls thrust into this horrible, Game of Thrones, has like taken like common pleasures or common jealousy and just amplified it completely up to where you make tons of mistakes on both sides. I'm not going to sit and defend the argument. I still think that Allison covered up for a murderer, and hid secrets because she can see Kristen Cole as an ally, and then turn around and does a repeat offense with the clubfoot later on in life, showing that she's serial in that, like, oh, I can ignore horrible things as long as it may or may not benefit me in the future.
Great point.
Just as much as Renera is like, well, I just want to find whoever I want to love and bang whoever I want to bang, and does that too, and creates bastards, which is like completely shit for the realm. I just think obviously one, again, hides it under her green dress, and the other one wears it on her sleeve and knows because you can't ignore her children, and just like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like that kind of, I think they both are pieces of shit in their own way. But dude, man, that scene of now they see you for what you are, like you're vengeful and you're jealous, and I knew it was there, and now everyone can see it. Just, oh man, the political intrigue in this show is just phenomenal, man. I do like the fact that fucking the most epic fucking never-ending story-esque thing happened with Aemon. Oh totally. My God, on Vhagar, dude. I like fucking yipped like I was at a football game when he fucking took off. Like, yeah! And I don't even like this character that much. But at that point, it's just a boy conquering his fears, pushing the bullies aside, and fucking claiming his birthright. Yeah. And then he fucking comes in all on that high, like, yeah, I got a dragon, and just like punches some little girl in the face. I'm like, oh, Oh, yeah, he's still a Targaryen. Look at that. Oh. But all in all, dude, an amazing show, amazing ride. I can't wait to see what happens next. Fucking, we got Aemon One Eye, guys. Fucking, and he is, you know, another second son, as y'all talked about in weeks past, that is just so much fucking better than the firstborn. You know, very similar to Viserys Daemon dynamic, as you know, it seems is going to unfold between those two.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, man, I love the fact that they're just taking whatever they want from the book and just like, you know what, those are good footnotes. Anyway, we're going to step over here. Great shit. Great follow-up as always. Again, thank you guys so much for plugging Sirenicide and Hearing the Haunted. And I can't wait to hear what y'all have in store for this one. And I'll talk to you guys next week.
Beauty. Great feedback. Archmaester Stitches, always great to hear from you.
Yes, sir. Thanks so much.
I love the moralist versus hedonist concept. That was a really great way of putting it. So, yeah, thanks again for sending your voicemail. Always look forward to it. All right, that's our show, episode 127. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks so much.
A huge thank you to John Bailey, the epic voice guy from the Emmy-nominated Honest Trailers, for announcing our show. And another huge thanks to our epic patrons on Patreon: Sirenicide, Lord John of House Grilz, Sir Matthew of House Repp, Lord Jeremiah of House Becker, the last High Gardener of High Garden, Sir KoriEugene of House Kuhn. And thank you to our newest Patreon, Lady Naya of House Thrice. She sends a message along with her patronage saying, "Glad you're back. Hi, Sir Duncan. You have a great on-air personality and have a knowledgeable and cleanly edited podcast. Thank you very much. I appreciate that." I do spend a lot of time editing. I hope to assist in keeping this podcast alive. Oh, and also, while I was playing catch-up, you mentioned about translating High Valyrian in one of your episodes. There's a language learning app that I use called Duolingo. I just so happened to see that folks can learn High Valyrian on it. That's pretty cool.
Nice.
Thanks for the cool information, Lady Naya, and thank you so much for your patronage. Leave some feedback next week. I'd love to read it on there.
Absolutely.
On another note, if you guys like my take on things, you might be excited to learn I'm working on a new project of my own. An all-original novel screenplay hybrid called The Core Saga. I'll give you guys some more information on that coming soon. If you'd like to donate or subscribe to support us, you can go to paypal.me/GOMpodcast or patreon.com/GOMpodcast to donate an amount of your choosing. There are links to both at gameofmicrophones.com.
Doing some online shopping, then going over to gameofmicrophones.com, scroll down to the bottom and click on our link to Amazon. As an Amazon associate, we earn from qualifying purchases. Any contribution you make helps, and you can help secure the continued existence of GOM.
And make sure to check out Sirenicide and Hearing the Haunted, the epic, serialized and anthology horror drama podcasts featuring me and Archmaester Stitches. You guys will love it. Next episode, we'll be covering House of the Dragon, Season 1, Episode 8, Lord of the Tides. And to remind you...
snap.
Corlys! Yeah, it's going to be Valyrian related.
What's going to happen with Corlys?
Yeah, something's going on. Just to remind you guys, we'll be recording on Monday afternoons, so make sure to send us your feedback as quickly as possible following the show's airtime so we can include your thoughts on the podcast.
If you'd like to call us, you can call us at 813-JOFFREY. That's 813-563-3739. And we promise Kristen Cole hasn't bludgeoned our telephone number to death.
If you'd like to write in, you can send a raven at ravens@gameofmicrophones.com.
Make sure to join us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/GOM podcast. Each week, we'll be posting a feedback thread where you can leave your thoughts and comments on new episodes for us to read on air. Imp slap!
Oh! You could also watch Game of Microphones on YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, and Odyssey. Audio podcasts are great, but video is better. And we're currently trying to build our tiny, minuscule subscriber count. I think we have 300 subscribers on YouTube right now. So go to youtube.com/gameofmicrophones and subscribe to our show. Likes, comments, and shares are appreciated.
We're also on Twitter, Instagram, Gab, and Minds at GOM Podcast.
And we're on Tumblr too at Game of Microphones. All right, that's our show. Thanks for listening.
I should have forbidden Sir Harwin from returning to the Riverlands. Heron's curse is said to be as strong now as it was after the conquest.
That's a ghost story. One Sir Otto and the Queen would gladly exploit.
I do not believe Allison capable of cold murder.
Each of us is capable of depravity, and more than you would believe.
I believe it of you.
If you're accusing me of some depravity, you'll need to be more specific.
So protect the king.
I typically think of wakes as before the wedding. I keep saying wedding. That's right. I'm about to ride you.
GoM would stretch it out for 12 seasons, just the dance.
Yeah. And Damon and Caraxes go flying through it. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were frozen for a second, but you were just standing really still.
And then do 18 seasons of Aegon's Conquest. But, you know.
It kind of feels awkward.
Yeah, he doesn't deny that he's depraved. He's like, which depravity are you speaking of? Be more specific. Like, bro.
So good. Yeah, totally weird.
Takes creepy uncle to a whole new level.
Yeah. Oh, shit, I fucking hit a button and lost my place. God damn.
My number 2 is Allison is... Let me try it again. You're not letting me speak the truth here. You're sending a cough.
Giving you a forced choke.
My number 2 is Allison is crazy.
Kristen Cole baited Sir Harwin.
Obviously, word's going to get out that the queen attacked the knife.
You said attacked
the princess.
The knife. The queen attacked the knife.
Yeah, so word's going to get out. Halfling.
Yeah, Halfling King, Merling King.
Halfling
Same type
King.
of...
Yeah, that sounds weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Onomatopoeia. It's not onomatopoeia. I just like saying that word.
It's a cool word. Can't blame you.
All Lucerys was trying to do was help Aemon get the sand out of his eye with the knife. So he's trying to slash that sand right out of his eye. So...
Oh my. I'm going to have to put that clip in now.
That's fine. So there's a helicopter landing. I can't.
Get to the chopper.
Yeah, it's all good.
Merlings taught him to breathe water in return for his seed.
Oh.
Ew.
Worth it.
Worth it.
Comes in all on that high, like, yeah, I got a dragon, and just like punches some little girl in the face. I'm like, oh yeah, you're still a Targaryen. Look at that.